3 years ago, scientists spotted a massive planet hovering nearby, even bigger than Nami's balls. They called it the Magic Planet, because apparently, what the fuck planet didn't sound professional enough. At first, everyone shrugged, until a shady company dropped a VR game called Immortal World. Players dove in with fancy goggles, swinging swords, slaying monsters, and grinding loot like their rent depended on it. Then came the plot twist. After logging off, people started awakening their in-game powers in real life. Imagine rage quitting a dungeon and accidentally summoning fireballs in your kitchen. Before anyone could patch the bug, a cult calling themselves the Believers of the Evil Star God spawned, basically gamer trolls with murder DLC. They farmed humans for XP. Cities burned, chaos spread, and humanity hit the ultimate game over. Lin Yuan lost his parents in that nightmare. The world crumbled. But when he thought it was curtains, he woke up, back to the launch day of Immortal World. Only this time, the system whispered, "Congratulations! You've unlocked the forbidden SSS tier class, Necromancer, a truly unique ability that no one had ever received before. Armed with future knowledge and trauma no therapist could ever fix, Lin Yuan vowed to raise an undead army, crush the cultists, and protect the planet that once failed him." The story began in the Immortal World. In this vast realm, a lizard was quietly watching the sunset, its gaze calm and distant. Suddenly it noticed several girls running frantically. These girls were fleeing from a pack of level 3 desert ghost wolves. The situation was dire. They were running for their lives while screaming for help. Amidst the chaos, a cleric among them muttered that they were extremely unlucky. Despite being near the level 1 area, they had encountered level 3 desert ghost wolves. Their group pushed forward in desperation, heading toward a place where scorpions usually dwelled. The leader of the group pointed ahead and told everyone to hold on a little longer, saying there are trees up ahead. She knew the desert ghost wolves couldn't climb trees. If they could reach them, they might just survive. As they ran, the leader thought to herself how wild and relentless these wolves were. Once they locked onto a target, they wouldn't give up until the hunt ended. Earlier, the party had already involved in battle and suffered injuries. Their remaining metal gear was damaged, and without a chance to regroup, their only option now was to run. If they stayed and fought, they would die right there. But during the escape, the party's mage suddenly tripped and fell to the ground. Two of her companions turned back, calling out to her, "Xiaohei," urging her to get up. But when she looked back, she was met with a horrifying sight. The wolves had already closed the distance and were lunging toward her. Lying on the ground, Xiaohei stared in horror as the wolves opened their jaws wide in her direction. She could only think that her end was near. But in the next moment, a bolt of lightning shot down from the sky, striking one of the wolves. As the smoke cleared, a sword was revealed, lodged deep in the wolf's body. After a brief moment, the sword was pulled out, and a man stepped into view, walking calmly toward the wolves. Yaohei, still lying on the ground, realized that this stranger had just saved her, and quickly thanked him. But when she opened her system screen to check his stats, she was shocked to see that he was only level 1. The man removed his hood and stared down the wolves directly. Then he said with a calm voice, "Level 3 monsters aren't that strong." Without hesitation, he rushed forward to attack. The desert ghost wolves, wild and unrelenting, charged at him. But the stranger held his sword tightly, and with a few swift and precise strikes, he cut down each one of them with ease. The girls, who had just been running for their lives, stood frozen, completely shocked at what they had witnessed. The young man stopped, standing calmly as sunlight shone upon him. None of them could believe it. He had defeated powerful desert wolves with just a few blows, but their relief was short-lived. One of the girls urged him to look ahead, and when he did, more wolves began to emerge from the dunes. In fact, now there were even more than before. It seemed the scent of blood from earlier had attracted more predators. Realizing how dangerous the situation had become, the leader suggested that they run. She pleaded with the young man to come with them, knowing there were too many monsters to handle alone. The boy simply turned and looked at her, thinking silently. But then, without a word, he accessed his system and pulled out some cards. A system prompt appeared, asking, "Would Yuan Han like to summon skeleton warriors?" Without hesitation, he confirmed the command and threw the cards. On hit, a massive magic circle appeared on the ground, and moments later, a group of level 3 skeleton warriors arise from within it. Despite this unexpected turn, the desert wolves didn't retreat. They snarled and rushed toward Yuan Han's summoned army without fear. The wolves charged, but Yuan Han stood calmly and ordered his skeleton warriors to attack. As the skeletal fighters clashed with the wolves, our protagonist took full advantage of the opportunity, preparing to strike again. As he saw with each cut he made, it was one less wolf that the protagonist managed to defeat. Time passed, and 10 minutes later, he finally finished off the last wolf, which collapsed to the ground. He then pulled his sword out of its body, and the system interface appeared before him, stating that he had killed 16 desert ghost wolves. With all of them defeated, he walked over and collected several items from dead wolves. As these glowing orbs flew toward his hand, the girls who had been watching remained in shock, unable to believe that he had actually defeated the desert wolves. The mage stepped forward and asked if he happened to be a mage herself, and whether he had used some sort of summoning skill. She admitted that she was a mage too, but had never heard of such a technique. Our protagonist turned to her and calmly asked when he had ever said he was a mage. As the mage named Gil pondered what he really was, the system displayed his stats. He belonged to a forbidden class of SSS tier. His class was level 2, Necromancer. Talent, Dark Summon, Hell's Gate. Strength, 5. Physique, 25. Mental, 30. Afterward, Lin Yuan approached the body of a wolf, placed his hand on the corpse, and a ghostly aura began to rise, not just from one but from most of the fallen wolves. A system window popped up, asking if he wished to use Dark Summon on the desert ghost wolves. When he selected yes, the unique trait of his class was revealed. Although he possessed a warrior's physique, he could still summon darkness. This ability allowed him to transform monster corpses into zombies to fight by his side. These zombified beasts retain their previous stats and levels. Also, they gained a new ability called Body of Death, making them immune to most negative spells. When he activated his second talent, Gate of Hell, it enabled him to reincarnate these monsters using the powers of darkness. The number he could summon would increase as his level rose. A dark structure emerged from the ground, and a massive portal opened. From within, the summoned wolves began to walk toward their master. Not only did they respond to Lin Yuan's summons, but if his level became high enough, he could eventually form an army of relentless undead. Lin Yuan began to move forward, but just then, the scene shifted back to the party leader. She asked him whether he was reviving undead creatures like zombies, and demanded to know who he truly is. He simply told her to check the time. It was almost upon them. Right then, the system issued a warning. The world boss was about to appear, a beast known as the Giant Wolf of Death. Upon hearing this, Lin Yuan declared that it was time to advance. He would take on and defeat the final boss. Meanwhile, in another location is this desert, a group of warriors stared up at the sky as it turned blood red. Bolts of lightning struck the earth. From these cracks in reality, strange portals opened, and pairs of crimson eyes began to emerge. A man on the ground recognized what was happening. The giant wolf was manifesting and heading toward them. He remembered reading about it on the game's official site. It had an attack radius of 50 meters. He screamed for everyone to run as fast and as far as they could. A mass of people began fleeing the area, but their efforts were in vain. The creature's speed was beyond their imagination. While some were caught and devoured, 2 individuals hid behind a large rock. Unfortunately, the boss turned its gaze toward them. As it moved, it continued to consume anything in its path. The system then revealed the monster's level. It was level 6, but one of the guy's brothers ended up getting caught. They stopped right there. After all, it would be insane to face a monster like that. It was the giant wolf. They were far too weak to take on such a beast. He wondered to himself if this was the final boss. How could anyone in this world go up against a monster like that? However, just as this question crossed his mind, they saw a mysterious man walking toward the boss, gripping his blade. As they looked a little closer, they realized one of the NPs told his team to look at the sword. He must be a newbie. The giant wolf of death was a level 6 boss. Without any help, no one present would be able to defeat a monster of that caliber. In this world, monsters were categorized by strength, starting from normal, then moving up through elite, leader, lord, king, god, and finally monarch class. Among them, even a level 1 boss of lord class rank was a terrifying threat to a newbie like him. They began to whisper about it, but just then, Yuan Han stopped. The wolf halted too, as the others screamed. Lin Yuan calmly sized up the level 6 world boss. Without fear, he stared down the snarling, monstrous wolf. Lin Yuan looked upon the beast that had once brought him to the edge of death, and declared while glaring at it, "It's nothing." Enraged, the giant death wolf bared its blood-soaked fangs. Suddenly, the world boss activated its skill, unleashing a deafening and powerful howl. Bracing himself, Lin Yuan slid to a stop, his sword held ready. After its roar, the massive death wolf lunged forward, activating its deadly Deathclaw skill. Yet Lin Yuan remained unshaken. He met the creature's charge with a confident smirk, mentally assessing the boss's stats. Unimpressed by its enhanced HP and attack power, the narration clarified that this beast was considered an impossible solo challenge for any low-level adventurer in the desert. Lin Yuan remembered his past life. He had almost died fighting this exact monster with a full team. But now, reincarnated and hardened by battle, he whispered to himself that he he was no longer the same. The ground exploded as the wolf's massive claws smashed into where he had just been. With incredible agility, Lin Yuan dodged the attack. An onlooker gasped in disbelief, stunned by Lin Yuan's unreal speed. Suddenly, a system warning flashed across the interface. The world boss was now enraged, its entire body glowing with furious red energy. Lin Yuan smiled confidently and placed his hand on the ground. He summoned his power, and a swirling maelstrom of green energy erupted from the earth. From this energy, a colossal Hell's Gate rose, towering over the battlefield and completely dwarfing the giant enraged Deathwolf. With a resolute stare, Lin Yuan commanded his undead army to attack. From the gate burst forth an entire horde of ghost wolf zombies. Onlookers froze in shock, recognizing the zombified desert ghost wolves. They questioned how a single person could possibly create an army of them. Lin Yuan mused that all his leveling on the way here had paid off. His gate capacity had increased significantly. The game's aggro mechanics kicked in. The boss ignored the minions and charged straight toward the summoner. The giant death wolf, its red eyes blazing, sprinted past the zombie horde, targeting Lin Yuan directly. But one of the ghost wolf zombies lunged, bravely intercepting the world boss. It clashed head-on with the massive creature, diverting its attack. Lin Yuan then revealed his strategy. He was deliberately exploiting the aggro system. With the boss distracted, he dashed in with speed and precision, striking the creature with a flurry of sharp, blue glowing slashes. The boss roared, letting out a haunting, spectral cry as the zombie pack relentlessly swarmed it. He explained that he used his summons to keep pulling the boss's aggro away from himself. Confident in his strategy and sheer numbers, he calmly stated that even if each summon dealt only a little damage, the boss's HP wouldn't last long under the continuous, brutal assault from his undead army. The onlookers were clearly impressed, even though the monster was only a low-ground world boss. At the back of the crowd, 3 adventurers began plotting something underhanded. The boss's HP had dropped to 500, and Lin Yuan continued battling, landing critical hits that steadily chipped away at the wolf's health. With only 10 HP remaining, the boss collapsed to the ground, and Lin Yuan moved in to finish it off. Seizing what they thought was the perfect opportunity, the 3 adventurers sprang into action. Lin Yuan, unfazed, taunted them by acknowledging that his zombie army had been wiped out. One of the men sneered, declaring that it was now their turn, and that the rewards from the world boss rightfully belonged to them. But before they could react further, Lin Yuan turned sharply to face them. One of the men barely managed to shout a warning. Without a moment's hesitation, Lin Yuan slashed through all 3 of them in a single fluid strike, calling them idiots as they fell to the ground, defeated. The rest of the crowd stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend how he had effortlessly taken down 3 level 3 thieves. With the threat eliminated, Lin Yuan turned back to face the boss wolf. He delivered a final critical blow, ending the beast's life once and for all. As the giant creature fell, he wondered what kind of rewards the game's first world boss would drop. His eyes landed on a treasure chest and a glowing gem that caught his attention. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a soul gem. Reading the item description, he learned that after players reached level 60, they would need to visit the Eternal Council, home of the fairies, to continue leveling up. Although that journey was still far off, soul gems were known to be one of the easiest ways to obtain legendary equipment in the immortal world. Most new players barely possessed blank ground equipment, and only a few had obtained black metal gear just hours ago. Relying on his experience from his past life, Lin Yuan had previously controlled 2 skeleton warriors to distract several elite lizards. While they were occupied, he swiftly looted the bronze treasure chest they had been guarding. Inside, he discovered a black lizard robe, a piece of bronze-crowned equipment. At that time, Lin Yuan had been honored with the title of Slayer. He understood that different titles in the game granted players various bonus effects or special status boosts. The bonuses from this particular title were quite impressive. Afterward, he checked the treasure chest again. The screen displayed a message congratulating him as the first player to kill a world boss, and he was rewarded with a silver treasure chest. Inside it, he found a silver moon sword, an Eye of Death ring, a regeneration potion, a skill scroll, and monster essence. It was a generous haul, one he considered a great victory. The rewards for being the first to defeat a world boss were indeed exceptional. His experience points were tallied, and his character stats were updated accordingly. Eager with excitement, he equipped the silver moon sword, admiring its balance and weight. With renewed confidence, he set off to explore the next stage of the game, ready to face even greater challenges. Lin Yuan was pleased to see that his level had increased from 3 to nearly 5. As he ventured deeper into the realm, the landscape became more vibrant, and the creatures more menacing. Each enemy he encountered was more formidable than the last. Lin Yuan knew that if he wanted to survive and continue climbing the ranks, mastering his skills would be essential. He recalled the battle strategies he had studied, and the allies he had made along the way. The thrill of the unknown beckoned him forward. With every step, his confidence surged, his mind focused on the trials ahead. Upon leveling up, he received 5 general attribute points. This time, he chose to assign 3 points to mental and 2 to strength. After checking his updated stats, Lin Yuan smiled with satisfaction. His attributes were now the highest among all players in the gravel desert. Armed with this newfound power, he felt invincible as he stepped into the harsh, arid landscape. He could feel the desert's energy pulsing around him. Each grain of sand whispered secrets of ancient battles, lost treasures, and looming dangers. His heart raced with anticipation, determined to unearth the mysteries buried beneath the sun-baked surface. Lin Yuan marched forward, ready to prove his strength against the formidable foes lurking in the shadows. He noted that his Hell's Hate stat still showed 0, but he remembered that even though all his Ghost Wolf zombies had been sacrificed, his Hell's Gate could now store up to 40 zombie monsters. Just then, a prompt appeared on his screen, asking if he wished to use Dark Summon on the corpse of the giant Death Wolf. Lin Yuan accepted, and with a grin of satisfaction, he successfully turned the boss wolf into a zombie as well. He stared at the reanimated creature, reflecting on how formidable it had been as a world boss. Not only did it possess powerful area-ficked attacks, but it also had impressive crowd control abilities. Now that it had been turned into a zombie, it gained not only the Undying Body trait, but also a new skill, Wrath of the Undead. With the giant zombie wolf by his side, Lin Yuan quickly replenished the zombies at the gate of the underworld. That world boss had entered the same place from which the zombies emerged, so people began calling it the gate of the underworld. The fact that Lin Yuan had turned the world boss into one of his zombie monsters, along with the mysterious appearance of that eerie gate, made him seem even more terrifying than the world boss itself. As Lin Yuan stared at them, the remaining adventurers panicked and fled in fear. He knew those people were still lurking nearby, hiding and watching from a distance. He recalled the 3 bandits he had killed earlier. They had dropped a black iron tier sword. While it would be a decent weapon for low-level players, Lin Yuan already possessed the Silver Moon Slash. He picked up the sword and began walking toward the rest of the adventurers. Their faces tensed in fear, each of them worrying that Lin Yuan might kill them and loot their equipment too. One of them even wondered whether it was still possible to escape in time. Lin Yuan approached one of the men and calmly asked if he was the one who had shouted earlier. The man trembled in fear, and after confirming it was him, Lin Yuan handed him the sword, saying, "Thank you for earlier. This sword should help you." The others were stunned that Lin Yuan had approached not to harm them, but simply to give away the weapon. One of them immediately recognized that the sword was a black iron tier weapon worth tens of thousands of RMB. After about 10 minutes, Lin Yuan continued walking, but then he suddenly felt something strange. The game screen turned off abruptly, signaling that the power had run out. He was back in the real world. Taking off the headset, he thought to himself that he needed to buy a proper gaming rig as soon as possible. Sitting in front of the office computer at home, he reflected on the Immortal World, a hyper-realistic, full-dive type game divided into multiple login zones based on real-world countries. Each zone contained several regions that players could choose from. At present, he was located in Elpad, which consisted of 4 nations: the Western Desert Kingdom, the Lin Yuan Return Empire, the Northern Abyss Empire, and the Tidal Island. As he logged in, the system prompted him to select his birthday. Despite having been reborn, he chose the same region as in his past life, the Western Desert Kingdom. Just before his death in the previous timeline, he had uncovered a significant secret. He remembered the chaos and destruction he had witnessed. Monsters ravaged everything, and helpless people screamed for aid. Wounded and buried among scattered rocks, Lin Yuan had seen 3 men flying across the sky. He had noticed an unknown observer spotted an emblem on a cloaked figure, identifying it as the yellow sapphire of the ancient Western Desert Kingdoms. The voice wondered in disbelief if the first follower of the demonic Star Sovereign bore the emblem of the guild. It gleamed with golden light as the cloaked figure stood before a terrifying, enthroned demonic entity. Lin Yuan recalled that the evil sovereign's first follower was the key to the catastrophe, realizing he had 3 years to stop them and prevent the impending tragedy. The mysterious golden emblem, his only clue to the enemy's identity, glowed vividly in his memory. He deduced that the emblem belonged to a Western Desert guild, and understood that he must level up in order to enter their city and unmask the traitor. Suddenly, a glowing blue card materialized in his hand, displaying the image of a skeleton warrior surrounded by swirling green energy. He stared in disbelief, questioning whether he had actually summoned the skeleton card. He explained that certain players could bring their in-game powers into reality. They were known as the Chosen, each possessing a powerful hidden profession and extremely high luck. These individuals were destined to become the main force against the evil sovereign, but Lin Yuan realized that he had gained his powers far earlier than he had in his past life. He smiled faintly, wondering how his newfound strength compared to that of the fated Chosen. Latter. He was suddenly startled by a sound from outside his door. Realizing it was dinner time, time, he headed toward the door as his mother asked his father what was going on with Yuan. Lin Yuan cheerfully presented a feast he had prepared, telling his stunned parents to come and eat. His father urged his mother to enjoy the meal, seeing this as a rare kind gesture. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan reflected on the pain of past loss and the burning desire to make amends. He remembered his parents, his father's worry over his gaming addiction, and his mother's fear of his angry outbursts. The memory of disaster returned vividly. His parents had died amidst the rubble, and he recalled the painful realization of his own foolishness. A single tear escaped his eye, a silent testament to the profound regret that haunted him. Back in the present, his mother asked if his sister Tantan would be home for dinner. She explained that Tantan was studying for a mock exam and asked him to deliver her a freshly prepared meal. As he happily ate, surprised by his own cooking skills, he suddenly stopped, noticing something amiss. He promised his father that he would learn to cook more dishes for them in the future. His parents stared at him, surprised and taken aback by his newfound maturity and kindness. His mother wiped a tear from her eye, moved by the change, while his father smiled warmly. Later, the scene shifted to a dark, quiet forest at night. A determined silhouette sprinted through the moonlit woods. He continued his strenuous run, pushing himself down a long flight of stairs. Lin Yuan relentlessly trained, realizing that he must forge a strong body to handle the immense power he now wielded. In the real world, everything seemed to spin as he pushed his physical limits under the open sky. His training run continued along a winding park path. He finally stopped, exhausted, but his eyes still burned with resolve as he checked his watch, clocking his sprint time, and noting with quiet determination that he still had a long way to go. A vortex of blue energy pulled him back into the game world. A system message confirmed his arrival in the gravel desert. He stood ready for action. The desert sand began to tremble and shift violently. A monstrous creature erupted from beneath the dunes with incredible speed. Unfazed, he looked up as a flock of monstrous birds descended upon him. He remained perfectly still, awaiting the creature's attack with cold calculation. The wailing bird let out a piercing screech as it lunged forward. As the birds attacked, his blade flashed in a deadly arc. With the threat dispatched, a notification confirmed he had killed 3 birds and gained experience. He scoffed, disappointed by the meager 15 experience points earned from the fight. A spectral eagle soared over the canyon, its form glowing with green energy. The bait landed, revealing a massive horde of red-eyed desert ghost wolves lying in wait. From his hiding spot, he noted that the bait had successfully drawn out a huge pack of ghost wolves. He watched as the relentless pack charged across the desert landscape. He consumed the monster essence, instantly boosting all of his abilities. His eyes glowed with power as he seized the opportunity before him. As the wolf pack lunged, he declared that it was time to continue his warm-up. With a single, precise slash, he effortlessly killed the first wolf. Another wolf lunged, only to be met by a blinding flash from his sword. With glowing eyes and a steady hand, he prepared for the next wave of attacks. 2 more wolves fell. A notification confirmed 4 kills. He whirled through the pack, his blade a blur of motion. He cut down another creature, bringing his kill count to 10 wolves. The remaining wolves hesitated, surprised by his relentless and overwhelming power. A strange sigil suddenly glowed on the ground, halting the pack in its tracks. The ghost wolves stared at the glowing symbol. Their advance completely stopped, believing they had finally arrived. He gripped his sword, ready for the real fight. He unleashed a devastating cross-slash, carving through multiple wolves at once. The powerful arc of his attack ripped through the monstrous horde. He continued his brutal assault, felling another wolf with ease. A system notification confirmed he had successfully killed 20 desert ghost wolves. Another notification appeared, marking his 30th kill. As the slaughter continued, a wolf howled in agony as it was impaled by a spike of energy from below. He landed after another fluid attack, surrounded by the carnage. A notification joyfully announced he had leveled up to level 5. The massive chained gateway to the underworld materialized. He observed with satisfaction that his Hell's Gate was once again filled with undead monsters. His new level 5 stats were displayed, showcasing his impressive power and fully stocked Netherworld Gate. He reflected that, with his increased attributes, he could now take on the elite monsters of the same level. Standing at the top of a cliff overlooking a desert city, he resolved that it was time to find that person. Lin Yuan arrived at the bustling streets of a large desert town. As he walked through the crowded marketplace, his cloaked figure drew the attention of many onlookers. Without hesitation, he stopped in front of a wooden door, his objective clear in his mind. He slowly pushed it open, stepping into a dimly lit room. Inside sat a bearded man named Kansi, a mage instructor. Upon hearing the door creak open, Kansi glanced up and asked, "Who's there?" Lin Yuan stepped forward and respectfully introduced himself, stating that he had come to learn skills. The game mechanics explained that while most skills were dropped by monsters, a select few could also be learned directly from special NPC instructors. Lin Yuan remembered remembered that Kansi had been one such instructor in his previous life. Kansi, meanwhile, daydreamed about the money he could use for drinks. Though he had once been a capable mage, he knew little about the newly unlocked Soul Reaper class. Still, he understood that it relied heavily on magic. Lin Yuan requested that Kansi teach him 3 basic skills to complement his current abilities: Spirit Flame, Healing, and Concealment. With a dismissive wave, Kansi replied, "Anything's possible with money." He casually summoned a glowing ball of magical energy and declared with mock enthusiasm, "Do your best, for the glory of mages." A system notification chimed, confirming that Lin Yuan had learned Spirit Flame and the art of healing, displaying their basic stats. Another message appeared, confirming the acquisition of his 3rd new skill, the art of concealment. Lin Yuan carefully analyzed his new skills. Though simple, they were effective, each with solid foundations, but all requiring rare resources to upgrade further. With his new abilities acquired, he resolved to continue leveling up. Soon he arrived at Black Sand Mountain and discovered the entrance to Kobold Mine. A system window explained that kobolds were level 5 monsters who preferred ambushes and traveled in large groups. Lin Yuan recognized this as the perfect opportunity to farm experience for his undead army. He drank a night vision potion, granting him 30 minutes of clear sight within the darkness of the mine. He planned to use this time to both master his new skills and search for hidden treasures. With a torch in hand and flanked by his formidable undead wolves, he ordered his spectral minions to move forward and clear the path. A distant sound echoed from the darkness, signaling that they were no longer alone. Leading his ghostly army deeper into the winding cavern, Lin Yuan remained on high alert. From the shadows, 2 kobolds with glowing red eyes suddenly emerged, ready to pounce. Holding his torch high, surrounded by his spectral wolves, he quickly scanned the darkness, aware that more kobolds were likely lying in ambush. In one swift motion, he hurled his torch deep into the cavern's depths. The firelight illuminated the area, revealing a massive staircase, and, just beyond it, a horde of snarling, red-eyed kobolds brimming with bloodlust. A system window popped up, showing the stats of the common kobold miner. The torch landed, igniting the ground and instantly revealing the enemy's position. He unleashed his undead wolves, ordering them to kill every single kobold in sight. Suddenly, a kobold ambushed him from above, swinging a heavy pickaxe. The furious kobold let out a mighty roar as it brought its weapon crashing down, but his undead tore through the front line. A system notification confirmed the kill of 2 kobolds. The smash skill barely harmed his undead wolf, proving its resilience in battle. Lin Yuan entered the fray, his glowing sword cleaving a kobold cleanly in 2. With 8 kobolds killed, he noted their weak combat capabilities, but reminded himself to dodge their crude shovels. He fluidly weaved through a storm of swinging pickaxes from the enraged kobolds. One kobold swung with ferocious intent, clearly aiming to crush him, but his blade flashed again, cutting down the attacker in a spray of blood. The slaughter continued as another notification confirmed the death count, 20 kobolds down. The mine workers lay motionless beneath him, as he stood victorious atop a pile of his fallen enemies. He smiled with satisfaction as his art of vanishing skill gained experience. Pleased with his progress and finding the kobolds too weak but efficient for leveling, he began converting their corpses into a new undead army. A system notification confirmed the creation of undead kobold mine workers, displaying their newly looted stash. He commanded these undead kobolds to move forward while he hunted for the leader of the minions, confident in the strength of his new powerful underlings. Venturing deeper into the cavern, he suddenly stopped, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The path ahead was lined with jagged crystalline formations that shimmered faintly in the dim light. With a smirk and a ball of green energy swirling in his hand, he triumphantly declared, "Found you." He unleashed the blast of energy, instantly killing 2 mud slimes and gaining experience. Cautiously, he moved forward, aware that a pair of glowing red eyes was watching him from the darkness. A massive kobold leader wielding a spiked metal whip revealed himself, standing unfazed by the death of his underlings. Lin Yuan stood ready, his undead army poised behind him to face the looming boss. He reflected that every predator was destined to become prey eventually, a memory flashing in his mind of a wolf devouring a bird, only to be later swallowed by a massive blue snake looming behind it. The brutal cycle of nature was clear, and he knew absolute danger lurked around every corner, waiting for even the slightest mistake. Boom! A brutal clash erupted in the darkness, prepared to annihilate everything in its path. As the intense battle prepared to unfold, when the wolf changed, a massive snake devoured one of the wolves. For Lin Yuan, this was the moment when the hunter became the hunted. Calmly, he caught the kobold leader's massive spiked weapon with one hand, gripping it tightly. He declared, "Gotcha." The kobold leader stared in disbelief as Lin Yuan effortlessly held back its powerful attack with a single, fluid motion. direction. Then, twisting the weapon back toward its wielder, Lin Yuan reversed the force. Crystalline shards erupted violently from the ground, catching and crushing the kobold leader's arms. The explosion of jagged crystals pinned and impaled the monstrous creature, trapping it completely. Wounded and immobilized, the kobold leader let out a furious, defiant roar. Its eyes widened in pure shock, unable to comprehend its sudden and absolute defeat. With a smirk and a glowing hand, Lin Yuan moved closer, preparing to absorb the essence of his fallen foe. He stood victorious over the monster's broken form, his blade still poised from the final blow. A system notification echoed in his mind, confirming the kobold leader had been slain. As his eyes glowed red with power, Lin Yuan sensed something else, a new and far greater threat emerging from the darkness deep within the cavern. He stood alone, silent, as the growls of an approaching horde began to echo around him, shaking the air with their rising fury. Suddenly, the kobold leader's corpse twitched one final time, activating a hidden skill that sent the entire kobold horde into a violent, bloodthirsty frenzy. Their attack and movement speed surged. Nearly 50 kobolds now charged straight at Lin Yuan like a tidal wave of rage, but Lin Yuan remained unfazed. Calm and ready, he raised one hand and summoned his undead wolves once again. "Go get some fresh air," he said casually, as if releasing them into a park instead of a battlefield. A glowing sigil formed in his palm, sparking with spectral energy, and from it emerged the spectral wolf pack. Their eyes glowed with fierce intent as they aligned at his side. Lin Yuan smiled with cold confidence as one of the wolves' eyes gleamed menacingly. "Let the hunt begin," he declared. Then, his world boss summoned, the massive undead wolf stepped forward, letting out a bone-rattling roar. The undead wolves charged headlong into the frenzied kobolds and chaos erupted in the cavern. One undead wolf sank its fangs deep into a charging kobold, ending its assault instantly. Just then, a system notification chimed in, announcing that the world boss had activated its demonic wolf's howl skill. The enormous wolf released a terrifying, echoing howl that sent a powerful green shockwave rippling through the battlefield. The sonic blast hit the kobold army head-on, stunning and weakening them all. Another notification confirmed a successful hit. The kobolds were now stunned and bleeding. Taking advantage of their immobilization, Lin Yuan gave a single, brutal command: "Kill them all." The wolves responded with unrelenting savagery. One by one, the enemy fell under their fangs and claws. System notifications rapidly flooded in. 40 kobold leaders were slain in moments. A triumphant tone rang out as Lin Yuan reached level 6. He stood among the carnage, glowing with power, absorbing the souls of the defeated enemies to fuel his growing strength. A new system window popped up, displaying the stats of a newly obtained summon. The kobold supervisor. The freshly raised undead kobold snarled, its green eyes glowing ominously. All around Lin Yuan, the corpses began to twitch and rise again, each one reanimated into a new undead minion. Watching the surviving kobolds scramble to flee in terror, Lin Yuan mocked them. "You really think you can escape?" he said coldly. A blinding flash erupted as his voice thundered. "Why don't you ask my sword's opinion first?" Without hesitation, Lin Yuan launched forward. His blade became a streak of silver light, cutting down the retreating kobolds effortlessly. But then, a sudden pressure filled the air. Sensing danger, he looked up in surprise as a golden light approached rapidly. He leapt back just in time. A tremendous force slammed into the ground where he had just stood. Dust and shock waves erupted outward. As the light faded, a towering figure emerged from the cloud. A colossal kobold, wielding a massive warhammer, let out a deafening roar. The real kobold boss had arrived. The boss swung his hammer at Lin Yuan, but he swiftly dodged, causing the massive strike to crash into a nearby rock, right where the jammer was stuck. Seizing the opportunity, Lin Yuan charged forward. Gripping his sword tightly, and thinking that this might finally be the end, he slashed at the boss. However, the boss's defense was formidable, completely negating the attack. Realizing this, Lin Yuan stepped back and muttered to himself that, as expected of a dungeon boss, even his best efforts couldn't pierce through its armor. Enraged, the boss let out a deafening roar and swung his hammer again with such force that it cracked the floor beneath. Lin Yuan dodged once more, noting that this dungeon boss operated with an entirely different set of attack patterns compared to elite-class monsters. It was at least 2 or 3 times more powerful than anything he had previously faced, and he understood he needed to create distance. Wasting no time, Lin Yuan summoned his undead forces, zombie kobolds, zombie wolves, and even the boss wolf, to engage the enemy. The kobold boss lunged forward with a heavy strike, landing a critical blow on the undead. But the zombie wolves retaliated quickly, biting at the boss and steering it toward Lin Yuan's direction. At the same time, the wrath of the undead skill activated, sending a wave of intense pain through the boss's body. Capitalizing on the moment, Lin Yuan activated Spirit Flame, directing its energy toward the boss. He recalled that, if his memory was accurate, the kobold boss had notably low resistance to magic attacks. The boss let out another furious roar and charged straight at Lin Yuan. In response, Lin Yuan triggered his invisibility, vanishing from sight and instantly reappearing behind the massive creature. Calmly, he remarked that since the boss was so eager to die, he wouldn't hold back and would strike at its weak points. Without hesitation, he stabbed the boss in the neck, inflicting significant pain. Furious, the boss swung its hammer wildly, but Lin Yuan leapt into the air, evading the attack. At that moment, he summoned the wolf boss to crash down onto the kobold boss. The zombie wolves followed close behind, joining the assault as Lin Yuan closely observed the ongoing battle. He quickly noticed that the boss's armor had finally been torn apart, exposing its vulnerable body underneath. Now was the perfect time to finish the fight. Without delay, Lin Yuan launched a fireball directly at the boss. A large group of kobolds appeared once again, and Lin Yuan, along with his undead army, immediately engaged them in battle. One by one, the kobolds began to fall, their numbers decreasing rapidly, until eventually they started to retreat. Sensing their desperation, Lin Yuan leapt in their direction, suspecting they were trying to flee once more. Drawing his sword, he declared, "This ends now," and charged forward, cutting them down amidst the chaos. In the heat of the clash, he struck down the kobold boss, earning 50 experience points and reaching level 7. A wave of satisfaction surged through him. This milestone was significant. He reminded himself that once he reached level 10, he would make his way toward the Western Desert Kingdom. Additionally, the effects of both his Spirit Flame and invisibility skills had reached level 2, doubling their power. While surveying the battlefield, Lin Yuan discovered a bronze treasure chest. Opening it with curiosity, he found several items: a hound leather pouch, an undying torch, a skull mask, and a shadow gauntlet. Intrigued, he used the leather pouch and received 20 gold coins. He recalled that a currency exchange between the real world and the game world was about to be established, meaning those 20 gold coins were worth approximately 200,000 yuan. Not bad at all, he thought with a smirk. He examined the undying torch and skull mask before turning his attention to the shadow gauntlet. After checking its stats, he equipped it with a grin. Finding a silver-grade item inside a bronze treasure chest was incredibly fortunate. The gauntlet's strength rivaled that of the kobold boss itself, and Lin Yuan couldn't wait to put it to the test. Meanwhile, outside the Cobalt Caves, the Flying Yellow Dragon group had just finished slaughtering a horde of wolves. One of the members commented that their new strategy seemed to be working flawlessly. They had taken down 30 desert ghost wolves in under a minute. Another added that, as long as they fought side by side like brothers, nothing could stand in their way. A young boy from the back chimed in, saying it was only natural for the guildmaster and vice-guildmaster to be strong enough to defeat so many desert ghost wolves on their own. He also mentioned that if those bastards from the Thunder Guild returned, they'd wipe them out and take all their gear. The vice-guildmaster, however, fell into thought, wondering aloud that if Lin Yuan hadn't appeared, they would have been the first to take down the world boss. He questioned which other guild even had the nerve to challenge them, but just then, the group looked at their screen, and to their shock, they saw that the boss wolf had already been slain by Lin Yuan. The vice-guildmaster muttered under his breath, frustrated and in disbelief. He didn't understand what kind of absurd luck Lin Yuan had, but he vowed that when they crossed paths, he would make sure to defeat him. However, the guildmaster urged him not to act recklessly. Lin Yuan was undeniably powerful, and instead of turning him into an enemy, they should aim to recruit him into their guild. The guildmaster had also heard rumors about a kobold dungeon nearby, and he intended to confirm its location first. For now, he ordered everyone to stay put and recover their strength. The vice-guildmaster grumbled quietly, irritated that the guildmaster had scolded him 3 times now, all because of Lin Yuan. It was getting under his skin. Muttering Lin Yuan's name bitterly, he swore that he'd make him pay. "Just wait," he growled. "I'll rip out his teeth and show the guildmaster who's truly the strongest." Just then, a nervous boy interrupted, his voice slightly panicked, urging the vice-guildmaster to look over there. The vice-guildmaster turned and his eyes widened in surprise as he saw a beautiful mage girl standing in the distance. Lin Yuan had successfully added the kobold boss to his undead army, boosting the number of zombies residing in the Gate of Hell by 270. She warned the group, telling them not to come any closer. If any of them dared, she wouldn't hold back. It was clear she was being cornered by members of a guild who had taken a disliking to her. One of the boys sneered, remarking how lucky they were, never expecting to run into such a beautiful woman. The Vice Guildmaster stepped forward, attempting to sound casual. He told her to relax, insisting they were just having some fun, and that she should enjoy it. Another boy added with a lewd grin that, if she served their Vice Guildmaster well, there would be plenty of rewards waiting for her. The young mage stepped forward again, her stance firm, repeating that she wouldn't hold back if anyone dared come closer. But the Vice Guildmaster only sneered in return. With a brutal motion, he kicked her to the ground and grabbed her by the hair, laughing cruelly. He mocked her for being a powerless mage, questioning how someone like her thought she could stand against them. "Don't be naive," he spat. "If you haven't given up yet, then go ahead. Give us your best shot." Forcing her down, he climbed on top of her, threatening her with vile intent. "Just try to resist," he snarled, his breath foul. "The more you struggle, the more fun it gets." She screamed in distress as he began tearing at her clothes, until, in the blink of an eye, a shadow moved. Lin Yuan appeared without a word and delivered a devastating punch to the Vice Guildmaster, sending him flying. The impact launched him through the air and into a nearby wall with a thunderous crash. The other guild members stood in stunned silence. Lin Yuan, his eyes cold, casually remarked that the gauntlet's effect was better than expected, much handier than he had imagined. One of the boys immediately turned and sprinted off to inform the guildmaster of what had just happened. The remaining two drew their weapons, shouting angrily, demanding to know who dared strike their vice guildmaster and insult the bloodstained guild. But Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed. He recognized the emblem stitched on their armor, Bloodfilth Guild. He remembered them all too well. In the early days of the immortal world, the Bloodfilth Guild had risen to infamy, becoming the top guild in Black Sand Town. Its members were mostly red-named players, villains known for theft, robbery, and murder. Within the game's system, players whose evil gauge reached 10 were branded red, marking them as dangerous. Although death in the game didn't equate to death in real life, being killed still meant significant losses, equipment, progress, and levels. Lin Yuan asked calmly, "So, you're from the Bloodfilth Guild?" His voice betrayed none of the rage simmering underneath. He recalled clearly how these rats had once caused him no end of trouble in his past life. One of the boys scoffed and confirmed his suspicions. He warned Lin Yuan that the Bloodfilth Guild was now the #1 power in Black Sand Town, and since he had just assaulted their vice guild master, he had made a deadly enemy. "You should be terrified," the boy hissed. "It's already too late to beg for mercy. If you want to avoid dying horribly, then cut off both your arms and kneel like a dog. Bark for us. Maybe then we'll let you live." Without blinking, Lin Yuan moved. In a flash, he slashed off both their arms, sending them screaming to the ground. He stood over them, expression unmoved. "I'll help you keep your arms," he said coldly. "But as for the barking, save it for your journey to hell." The mage girl slowly rose to her feet, stunned by Lin Yuan's sheer power and composure. She looked at him, breathless, silently thinking how strong he truly was. Meanwhile, the vice guildmaster groaned and forced himself to his feet, chugging a regeneration potion that restored 20% of his HP and mana. His face twisted in fury, veins bulging from his forehead. As the potion's effects kicked in, he screamed in rage, pointing at Lin Yuan and bellowing, "You're dead! I swear! You're going to die!" The guildmaster arrived, accompanied by a man who pointed directly at Lin Yuan, declaring that he was the one bold enough to come there seeking death. The man accused Lin Yuan of nearly killing the vice guildmaster, his voice filled with fury. In response, the guildmaster drew his weapon, ready for confrontation. But the moment he laid eyes on Lin Yuan, he froze. Lin Yuan wasn't alone. Beside him stood the rumored figure Anil, and he is known for his cold, piercing gaze and a sword said to be as sharp as moonlight, capable of cutting through anything. Even while standing still, Lin Yuan radiated a crushing pressure. The man beside the guildmaster urged him to act, shouting that Lin Yuan was a blind fool who dared to provoke the Bloodfilth Guild and should prepare for death. Yet, the guildmaster hesitated. The overwhelming pressure and that sword both felt like something born from a powerful boss stroke. He began to suspect that the man in front of him truly was Lin Yuan, and realized that those who had dared to provoke him were in deep trouble. Lin Yuan silently wondered if this really was the guildmaster of the Bloodfilth Guild. At the same time, the guildmaster, weighing his pride, understood he couldn't afford to back down in front of his men. There was no turning back now. Accepting that the battle was inevitable, he charged forward. A nearby girl called out to Lin Yuan, warning him to stay alert, just as both the guildmaster and vice-guildmaster launched their joint assault. The guildmaster roared that offending the Bloodfilth Guild had been the worst mistake of Lin Yuan's life. He saw this as the perfect chance to crush him, especially with the vice-guildmaster joining the attack. But Lin Yuan was unfazed. He swiftly summoned a kobold chief, which struck the vice-guildmaster with force, forcing him to retreat. Seizing the moment, Lin Yuan turned to counterattack. With a cold edge in his voice, he declared that it was now his turn. In a flash, Lin Yuan delivered a powerful slash that struck the guildmaster down, killing him instantly. As the dust settled, he remarked that not even the first gate had been enough to make him take this fight seriously. Just then, a system notification appeared, warning that Lin Yuan had killed another player and his evil value had increased by 2 points. He noted to himself that as long as it didn't rise again within the week, it would eventually reset and disappear. The girl beside him pointed out that the remaining members of the guild were now fleeing and asked whether he planned to pursue them. Lin Yuan glanced in their direction and replied calmly that they were nothing but minions, not worth his time or energy. He then began looting the fallen bodies, collecting valuable items including the explosive blade axe, the dragon teeth crossblade, and the thorn dagger. After inspecting their stats, he commented with some satisfaction that they weren't bad, good enough to use or sell for a decent price. The girl cautiously approached and thanked him for saving her, admitting that she still didn't even know his name. Lin Yuan turned away, beginning to walk off, and casually told her that one day she'd see his name at the top of the global top 10 combat power leaderboard. The girl blinked, unimpressed and slightly confused, wondering aloud who even cared about such a thing. Yet, almost involuntarily, she found herself following him. In the vast, windswept desert, Lin Yuan was locked in a fierce battle against a horde of howling thunder scorpions. He had already slain 60 of them, and with each kill, his level steadily increased. He had now reached level 8. Although collecting the paralyzing grass proved somewhat troublesome, he deemed it worthwhile due to the additional rewards he received. He recalled that 2 days earlier, a man had contacted him, someone who spoke as though they had known each other for a long time, greeting him as if they'd finally met. At that moment, a screen had appeared in front of Lin Yuan, presenting him with a special commission, a request from the alchemist Moore, offering a dedicated mission to journey into the howling desert, gather 100 paralyzing grasses, and deliver them to the designated contact. Lin Yuan had accepted the mission without hesitation, keeping in mind that a special dungeon was soon going to open in the main city area. He knew from experience that the monsters within that dungeon would all possess thunder elemental attributes. In order to survive and clear it, players would require high thunder resistance. Because of this, items that granted such resistance were in extremely high demand, with their market prices soaring into the thousands of gold coins. Lin Yuan remembered that, in his past life, many players had amassed great fortunes during that very event. He firmly believed that completing the paralyzing grass collection quest would reward him with the formula to craft a thunder resistance potion, an asset that could become incredibly valuable in the days to come. It was the first day the quest NPC had appeared in the designated travel town, and once the mission was completed, the character would disappear permanently. That meant the opportunity to obtain the potion formula was a one-time event, and Lin Yuan was determined not to miss it. Snapping out of his thoughts, he focused on the battle at hand, continuing to fight his way through wave after wave of howling thunder scorpions. These level 6 monsters were fiercely guarding the paralyzing grass, but with his current strength, they no longer posed any real threat. Since he had already accepted the mission, Lin Yuan resolved to maximize his harvest skill proficiency while collecting the required grass along the way. Using the harvest skill with precision and efficiency, he began gathering every plant in sight, gradually making his way deeper into the treacherous desert. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled violently, and without warning, a scorpion lunged at him, unleashing a skill called Silver Slash. Lin Yuan swiftly leapt to the side, narrowly dodging the attack, only to find himself facing a far more dangerous opponent, a mutated creature known as the Crystal Thunder Scorpion. The signs were unmistakable, and Lin Yuan immediately understood that this was no ordinary threat. A mutated grown monster, appearing in such a place, was a rare and alarming event. He quickly checked its stats, analyzing the creature's capabilities. It was clearly formidable, and he determined it would serve as the perfect target to refine and test the power of his Silver Moon Sword. Without hesitation, Lin Yuan launched his assault. However, he quickly realized that the monster's crystalline armor had no apparent weak points. Its body was completely sealed, offering no clear openings to exploit. The Crystal Thunder Scorpion retaliated with deadly precision, activating a skill called Paralysis Thunder, followed immediately by a second strike, Poison Spiky Pierce. Lin Yuan evaded the attack with a quick jump, causing the piercing strike to accidentally hit the scorpion boss itself. Sensing an opportunity, Lin Yuan dashed forward and unleashed a swift slash, though he noted that the monster's strength was even greater than he had anticipated. Understanding that a head-on fight would be dangerous, he decided that he had to change his approach and divert the creature's attention. As the mutated beast charged at him once again, Lin Yuan summoned his kobolds, ordering them to attack and distract the scorpion boss. The kobolds charged forward and struck, but their attacks only dealt minimal damage, which was far from enough to weaken the monster. The kobolds attacked the scorpion boss but dealt only minor damage, which led Lin Yuan to realize that their strikes hadn't landed a critical hit. In response, the scorpion boss unleashed a devastating skill, Earth-Shattering Claw. At that very moment, Lin Yuan launched his fire blast, shouting for the creature to taste the power of his upgraded soul fire. The fiery strike landed cleanly, igniting the battlefield. Meanwhile, the kobolds managed to ensnare the scorpion boss with rope, momentarily restraining it as it let out a piercing, agonized scream. Seizing the opening, the kobold chief delivered a critical blow, slamming the monster to the ground. Since the boss's crystalline armor had no visible gaps, Lin Yuan decided brute force was the answer. Equipping the hand armor he had acquired earlier, he charged forward without hesitation, determined to reduce the creature to ashes with a heavy, explosive strike. He pummeled the scorpion boss relentlessly, each hit echoing like thunder until the beast let out a deafening screech as it was driven deep into the sand. Finally, with one last crushing blow, the boss collapsed and was defeated. A system notification appeared, confirming Lin Yuan had earned 560 XP. Without missing a beat, he turned his attention to the mutated corpse and began examining the stats of what had now become the Thunder Pistol. At the same time, the scorpion zombie, newly risen, seemed to be analyzing its own skill set. Wasting no time, Lin Yuan summoned the creature, now one of his pets, and prepared for yet another encounter. A swarm of scorpions began to emerge, surrounding him, but Lin Yuan simply smiled. This was the perfect moment to test out his new pet. With a glint in his eye, he declared that he would enjoy playing with them. The zombie scorpion boss unleashed a devastating skill, Crystal Thunderstorm. The area lit up with blinding energy as the storm annihilated the swarm in an instant. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan joined the fray, targeting weak points with surgical precision. His slashes tore through vital spots, showing no hesitation and no mercy. The enemy stood no chance. After the battle ended, a notification confirmed what he already sensed. He had leveled up again, reaching level 10. Checking his stats, Lin Yuan couldn't help but remark how satisfying it felt to gain 2 levels in one go. Among the rewards he received were several valuable items, a silver-tier lightning spear footguard, the ring of paralysis, and even a spectre hand crossbow. Examining the loot, he noted with satisfaction that everything obtained from the treasure chest was of silver-tier quality. He thought to himself that selling those items could go a long way in improving his family's situation in the real world. Then another notification appeared on his screen, stating that all monsters in the area had been eliminated. It also congratulated him for obtaining a gold-tier class skill book. Curiously, Lin Yuan opened the book's interface and discovered that it granted a Dark Curse skill, exclusive to the Necromancer class. Feeling incredibly fortunate, Lin Yuan thought that his luck had truly turned for the better. The screen confirmed that the skill book had been successfully added to his memory database. A final message congratulated him on acquiring a powerful, classic ability, Dark Curse. Eager to understand its potential, Lin Yuan focused his attention on the stats and detailed description, ready to see just how powerful his new skill truly was. Lin Yuan looked at the glowing energy in his hand and realized he could now restore 20% of an undead's health. His expression grew serious as he contemplated the tactical advantage this new healing ability granted his summoned creatures. Turning toward his pet giant scorpion, which was currently sitting at only 60% health, he decided to put the ability to the test. He extended his arm and released a concentrated beam of restorative energy. The glowing blue light struck the creature, and several rings of shimmering light spiraled around its body, signaling the activation of a healing effect. A system notification promptly confirmed the creature's HP had been restored to 80%. The scorpion let out a thunderous roar, its strength returning. With the healing complete, Lin Yuan decided it was time to head to the main city and begin searching for his first subordinate. Suddenly, without warning, a strange shadowy entity appeared behind him, embracing him in a chilling grip. Caught completely off guard, Lin Yuan froze, an odd sensation washing over him. A fleeting thought passed through his mind as he tried to process what had just happened. The scene abruptly shifted, transitioning from the digital realm to a different reality altogether. He found himself standing inside his home. His mother sat at the table behind him, calling out that his father had hurt his back and needed help. Snapping to action, Lin Yuan hurried to his father's side, gently guiding the man to the couch and telling him to rest. His mother scolded her husband for acting recklessly, questioning why he had tried to fix the air conditioner on his own. Lying down with a pained expression, his father explained that he was simply trying to save money wherever he could. He brushed off the injury as minor, saying he just needed some rest before picking up Xiaotan from school the next day. Lin Yuan stood silently at the door, watching him. His expression hardened as he looked at his father, resting in quiet discomfort. The next morning arrived, casting golden sunlight over the city's tall, bustling skyline. A loud noise from downstairs jolted his parents awake. Peering from their bedroom, his tired mother called out, asking why Lin Yuan was making such a racket so early. To their astonishment, they discovered two workers setting up a brand new television in the living room. One of the delivery men confirmed the purchase, stating that Mr. Lin Yuan had ordered the appliances and asked them to verify the delivery. His father stood frozen, speechless, wondering aloud if he was dreaming. The workers continued with the installation, quietly focused on their task. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan was at the gym, immersed in a rigorous workout session. He pushed his body to the limit, sweat glistening across his toned muscles. After finishing a set, he walked over to a treadmill and casually told an employee not to worry about the disturbance. The gym worker approached him and asked if he was interested in their VIP package, which required a full year's payment in advance. Without a second thought, Lin Yuan handed over his bank card and agreed, stating he would also like to sign up for family memberships. In his mind, he considered selling some of his unused gear to fund both home renovations and the gym passes. He wanted his parents and younger sister to start training early, to adapt to the upcoming immortality phase. The gym employee watched him with admiration. Despite his intense training, Lin Yuan didn't even seem winded. As she took the payment card and glanced at it, her eyes widened in shock. It was a premium VIP card, only issued to those with over 5 million in their account. On a quick call with his family, Lin Yuan calmly explained that the money was prize money, telling them not to worry, and assuring them he would stay with his sister. The employee stared at the card in her hand, thinking how incredible it was that someone so young could already be so capable and successful. The scene shifted again to Shu Shui First High School. Students buzzed with excitement, chatting about heading to the internet cafe. Among them walked a blonde girl with a blue bow, descending the stone steps of the school alone. This was Lin Tan, Lin Yuan's younger sister. Her thoughts drifted to her own brother, who had always been buried in his games, detached from reality. Her gaze sharpened. She didn't need a brother like that. In fact, she didn't want one at all. Just then, a fellow student called her out, accusing her of being arrogant despite her beauty. A group of boys blocked her path, their leader demanding that she show some respect. After all, they had come to personally invite her. Lin Tan's cold defiance only infuriated the leader further. He raised his fist to strike, sneering as he called her shameless. Lin Tan flinched at the outburst but stood her ground, voice unwavering as she warned him that she would call the police if they continued harassing her. Suddenly, one of them shoved her violently, sending her sprawling to the ground. Her classmate gasped in fear, calling out her name. The bully loomed over her, shouting that she should feel honored and questioning why she behaved so high and mighty. As he prepared to strike, Lin Tan instinctively raised her knees and crossed her arms, bracing herself for the inevitable blow. But just as his hand descended, a powerful grip clamped down on his wrist, halting the attack mid-air. Lin Tan's eyes widened in disbelief as she looked up to see her brother, Lin Yen, standing over her. His fingers dug into the man's wrist with unwavering strength, his eyes glowing with fury. "Who gave you permission to lay a hand on my sister?" he asked, voice low and menacing. With a faint scratch still visible on her cheek, Lin Tan stared at him in utter shock, barely able to whisper his name. Lin Yuan's gaze shifted to the group of thugs. His face was shadowed, expression unreadable, but his fury radiated clearly. The bully struggled against his iron grip, shouting angrily, demanding to know who this stranger thought he was. The others circled him quickly, sneering and asking if he had a death wish. Their leader, seething with rage, swore to knock out his teeth and ordered his men to break his arms. Without hesitation, Lin Yuan sprang into action. In a blur of motion, he landed a thunderous punch to one thug's face, sending blood spraying through the air. Another attacker lunged in with a high kick, but Lin Yuan remained calm, his eyes following the movement with unshaken focus. He sidestepped effortlessly and countered with a brutal punch to the man's abdomen. The sheer force of the strike caused a shockwave to ripple outward. The main thug staggered to the ground, but Lin Yuan wasn't finished. He stepped forward and stomped down mercilessly on the man's face, crushing him beneath his foot with unforgiving strength. He stood tall amidst the wreckage, his presence so overwhelming that the very ground beneath him seemed to crack and tremble. With his foot firmly planted on the fallen bully's chest, he looked down at him in disgust while stunned students watched in absolute silence. With the fight decisively over, he turned to his sister and said simply, "Let's go." Lin Tan's friend stood frozen, speechless from what they had just witnessed. As they walked away, she glanced at her brother and asked why he had come to pick her up. Quietly, she wondered, this was the same brother who usually spent his days glued to games, never leaving the house. Lin Yuan explained calmly that their father had injured his back, and their mother was currently taking care of him. Lin Tan blinked in surprise and asked if the injury was serious. He reassured her that it wasn't anything major and told her not to worry. They continued walking side by side, but an awkward silence lingered between them. Neither of them knew quite what to say. Lin Tan realized it had been a very long time since they'd spoken like this, and now, being with him again felt unfamiliar and strange. Lin Yuan walked with his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed ahead. Just then her friends called out from behind, hurrying to catch up. They gushed over him excitedly, praising how thoughtful it was of him to come and get her. One asked why she had never mentioned having such a strong and handsome brother. Lin Tan glanced sideways, watching him as he walked ahead. More girls nearby turned their heads, clearly intrigued by the mysterious newcomer. One brave student greeted him, and he responded politely. Lin Tan observed silently, realizing she had never noticed how tall he actually was. She wondered when he had started working out, now understanding how he had taken down the thugs so effortlessly. In her mind, he had always been the quiet type, someone who would stand alone in a crowd, absorbed in his own world, a gamer. And now, as she walked beside him, a single thought echoed in her mind. When did he change so much, and why? Students began to say their goodbyes after class, voices echoing through the hallway. Lin Tan smiled and waved cheerfully, calling out that she'd see everyone tomorrow. But as she turned away, her bright expression faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. Something felt off. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly crouched down in front of her, casually offering to carry her. A few students lingered nearby, watching with surprise and whispering among themselves, clearly intrigued. Flustered, Lin Tan quickly insisted she could walk on her own, her cheeks turning pink at the unexpected offer. Before she could react further, he pulled her gently forward. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and before she could protest again, he hoisted her onto his back without hesitation. Completely ignoring her protests, Lin Yuan began walking calmly. He explained that everyone else had already left, and advised her not to push herself if her ankles still hurt. He then pointed at her scraped foot, reminding her that she had twisted it earlier while pushing herself too hard. Stunned, she stared at him, wondering how he had even noticed the injury. Moments later, they arrived home. Lin Yuan carried his sister through the door and casually announced their return, prompting visible surprise from their parents. The older couple exchanged a quiet, puzzled glance, unsure how to process the scene before them. Trying to lighten the atmosphere, their father cleared his throat and said simply, "What matters is that you're both home safe." Later that evening, the family had settled in. Lin Yuan stood at the sink, washing dishes with mechanical ease. Meanwhile, their mother turned to Lin Tan and remarked how different her brother seemed now. Her father nodded in agreement, adding that Lin Yuan had started cooking and even purchased new appliances for the house. Their mother added that the bond between them had improved too, reminding her of when they were children. Lin Tan sipped her drink quietly, reflecting to herself that her brother had always been a little strange, but now she couldn't help but wonder if he had truly changed. After finishing the dishes, Lin Yuan wiped his hands and adjusted his hoodie. "Everything's taken care of," he said plainly, before adding that he was heading back to his room. Tan Tan, holding a warm drink nearby, glanced at him silently, her expression shifting. As he walked off, she thought to herself, somewhat disappointed, that he was still just a shut-in who played video games all day. But just then, he paused at the doorway and turned, holding something out to her, a bottle. She blinked in surprise as he explained that it was for her ankle, telling her to apply it after her shower. It had excellent therapeutic effects. Then, without waiting for a response, he casually added that he was off to play games, and told her not to bother him unless it was important. He closed the door behind him, and Tan Tan sat down slowly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "No one wants to go into your weird room anyway," she whispered under her breath. When their mother asked if anything had happened at school, she simply replied that nothing important had occurred, before heading off to shower. Meanwhile, in the dim glow of his room, Lin Yuan leaned back into his gaming chair, settling in as he pulled on his VR helmet. It was time to return. The moment his consciousness synced with the virtual world, his avatar dropped into the game with a thunderous impact, landing in the scorched sun district of Windsand. His goal was clear: find and capture the elusive target he referred to only as Rat. From above, his avatar surveyed the sprawling desert city, its sun-baked walls glowing under the digital light. A system message appeared, confirming that he had entered the Windsands region. Down below, a man knelt on the ground, desperately pleading with a guard, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But the officer showed no mercy, driving a spear down and silencing him with cold authority, ordering him to prison 1. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed beneath his cloak, surprise flashing across his face as he observed the brutal scene. The city guard paused briefly, sensing something or someone, but after scanning the area, dismissed it as a false alarm and led the prisoner away. Lin Yuan remained hidden in the shadows, watching until they disappeared down the corridor. He knew these patrols were sharp-eyed and relentless. He needed to lay low for 3 more days until his sin level dropped. But this quiet stretch also gave him a chance to retrieve something valuable from an old friend he hadn't seen in a long time. Later, a man dressed in ornate robes scoffs, mocking Lin Yuan for being just a low-level mage, weaker even than the patrol guards. But the mood shifts as another man suddenly gasps in pain, dark fluid spilling from his mouth. A hooded figure calmly explains that the man has been poisoned, his organs already deteriorating. Without immediate treatment, he warns, the man won't survive more than a month. The afflicted man cries out that the antidote requires the fat of a rotted gillfish, a creature found only in the deadly muddy clay desert. A system prompt appears, offering a gold-tier quest to retrieve the gillfish fat and save the dying man. With a confident smile, Lin Yuan accepts the mission. As he reaches the muddy clay desert, emerging from murky waters, a scaly beast with blood-red eyes watches from the shadows. Suddenly, a level 15 elite rotted gillfish bursts out, its gaping jaws lunging toward a startled adventurer. A female squad leader warns her team of the creature's razor-sharp teeth, urging them to hold formation. Chaos breaks out as 2 of her teammates are knocked away, one screaming that his back is broken. A powerful tail swipe sends the leader crashing into a pit, her team scattered and surrounded by more fish monsters. Just then, a system video announces the activation of Tail Wave Leap. A massive elite gillfish launches itself from the mud. The warriors brace for impact, weapons raised, but the monster opens its jaws to strike. A blonde warrior watches in horror, yet before the blow lands, Lin Yuan flashes forward, pulling the warrior aside. His eyes glow with power as he prepares to counter. In a surge of magic in his hand, the monster has no time to react. The spell lands with crushing force, and Lin Yuan touches down gracefully, unshaken. Kneeling in the mud, he touched his neck, asking himself in disbelief if he had truly survived the attack. But his relief was short-lived. As he looked up, a sudden realization struck him. He began to wonder about the great hero who had just saved his life. Now airborne, the hooded adventurer hovered with quiet confidence, green magical energy swirling around him as he prepared his next move. A surge of power erupted from his hands, crashing down onto the massive creature below. The green tendrils lanced through the swarm, striking the smaller fish monsters and sending them into disarray. Even the elite monster let out a guttural roar, clearly reeling from the assault. The remaining fish turned their attention to the lone figure above, readying themselves to strike. From a distance, the blonde warrior screamed a desperate warning, begging the hero to be careful. In the next moment, 2 of the scaly creatures launched forward, red eyes locked on their target and closing the distance with deadly speed. But Lin Yuan scoffed, unimpressed. Was this truly the best they could do? He landed cleanly on the elite monster's back, sword materializing in his hand. With a swift motion, he unleashed a devastating strike. The energy-infused blade slammed down with immense force, crashing into the monster's skull and halting the enemy's charge instantly. The blonde warrior could only watch in stunned disbelief. This lone adventurer was single-handedly holding back monsters that had overwhelmed his entire 8-man party. Yet before anyone could celebrate, a horrifying thought crossed the warrior's mind. His expression twisted in fear as he remembered. These creatures had a group attack skill too. Right on cue, a remaining moldfish let out a unified roar. Still standing atop the elite beast, Lin Yuan remained firm as a sickly green aura began to envelop the battlefield. Suddenly, a violent vortex of dark green energy erupted from the ground, spiraling outward. A system message flashed. The monsters have initiated a group skill. Toxic fog causes hallucinations. Calmly, Lin Yuan raised his hand and summoned his beast. From beneath, a massive wolf burst forth at his command. Standing tall atop the elite monster, he ordered the creature to use Howl of the Hungry Wolf. The wolf's thunderous howl echoed across the battlefield, and another system notification confirmed a successful hit. The monsters were dazed. Seizing the moment, Lin Yuan prepared his next move. Covering his face as streams of digital code spiraled around him, a system window revealed the item he had just activated, a one-time use awakening mask, an item that protected against toxic fog. Now immune to the air once more, his sword gleamed in his grasp as he swung it wide in a powerful arc, descending toward the monsters below with relentless force. The the giant scorpion activated its skill, unleashing a devastating ability known as Crystal Thunder. A barrage of piercing purple energy projectiles erupted from its body, streaking through the air and slamming into its targets. One of the large fish monsters was struck directly, triggering a violent explosion that coated it in a sandy crystalline substance. Sharp energy crystals continued to tear into the monster's newly formed outer layer, piercing deep into its body. Yet, remarkably, the creature withstood the initial onslaught. With its gaping maw wide open, it let out a defiant roar, proving it was still very much alive. Nearby armored soldiers looked on in shock, realizing the attack wasn't enough. The enemies were too strong and far too many. Just then, a figure dropped from the sky, landing firmly on the sandy ground. As the dust settled, one of the soldiers stepped forward, bewildered, watching as the stranger rose to his feet. The newcomer calmly asked, "Who said my intention was to kill them all?" The hooded man stood confidently, eyes sharp beneath his cloak. One of the soldiers suddenly gasped, realizing something. The scorpion's attack had targeted the female monster's stomach. The several slain female monsters now lay motionless, leaking a strange purple fluid. From a distance, the surviving males watched, but their expressions changed. An unsettling understanding dawned upon them. The males, now filled with rage, turned on each other and began to fight in a wild frenzy. It became clear, when the females died, their ruptured egg sacs released large quantities of muscatone, a potent substance found within the purple fluid. This natural compound triggered the male mackerels into a violent frenzy, making them attack anything in sight. The battlefield descended into chaos, a self-inflicted storm of destruction. Lin Yuan, standing amid it all, simply explained that he had used the monster's biology against them, letting them destroy one another. But anyone could respond. The sand trembled violently. A massive tail thrashed in the dunes as a new threat burst forth. A colossal sandworm-like beast lunged from beneath the earth, its jaws open wide as it barreled toward Lin Yuan. Cries of warning echoed, but Lin Yuan moved calmly. In one smooth motion, he leapt onto the creature's head, standing atop it without fear. Soldiers identified it as a female mackerel, one unusually large for its kind. Lin Yuan noted that its arrival was perfect for the next phase of his plan. Without hesitation, he summoned his wolf pack. The summoned beast swarmed the elite monster, clawing and tearing at its tough hide. Despite being a level 15 elite, their relentless assault managed to immobilize it, though they had yet to deal any serious damage. Still, it was enough. Lin Yuan received a system notification confirming the kill of another nearby creature seen. That immunity, he swung his sword and slashed open the massive monster's belly, reaching inside to retrieve a large handful of eggs. Without delay, he stuffed the slimy clutch into the severed head of one of the fallen beasts. Onlookers were left stunned, unable to make sense of his actions. Then he gave his next command. The wolf boss, carrying the egg holder head, rushed toward a large rock formation at the center of the area. Upon reaching the peak, the beast placed the head atop it and let out a powerful, echoing roar. The scent of muscatone began to spread rapidly, drawing the attention of the frenzied male monsters below. The plan worked. Driven by instinct, the horde of male mackerel mindlessly charged toward the scent source, colliding with each other in a chaotic swarm. The massive creatures slammed into the rock and each other, knocking themselves out in a blind frenzy. At last, the others realized the genius behind Lin Yuan's strategy. With the battlefield in disarray and the enemies incapacitated, Lin Yuan summoned his kobolds and ordered them to begin their work. A kobold swung its pickaxe into the side of a fallen mackerel monster. Nearby, a soldier pointed to a blue object, asking if it was the poison sac from inside the male creature. Lin Yuan confirmed it, explaining that the foul gas it emitted caused other fish to sense danger and stay away. Just then, a massive horde of monsters appeared in the distance. As they approached, the toxic gas forced them back, leaving them struggling to advance. Although not entirely immune, the gas weakened them and kept them at bay. The group's leader raised his arms in triumph, shouting with joy that the fish were finally gone. Lin Yuan observed the aftermath calmly, taking note of the remaining monsters, subquest status, and the loot scattered around. He stood near a cluster of strange pods that had sprouted from the sand. Removing his mask, he quietly acknowledged its significance in the battle. Though it cost 5 gold coins for a single use, he deemed it well worth the price. Among the rewards, he obtained rotting gillfish oil, a rare ingredient used in crafting high-level potions. Suddenly, Lin Yuan remembered an item he had nearly forgotten. He pulled out a small, round, red object, the wave tickler's nose, an armor piece made from rot fish skin. He stared down at the peculiar item, unimpressed. To him, the quest reward felt like a cruel joke, as the nose resembled a clown's accessory. But to his surprise, the blonde party leader was captivated by it. The man's eyes sparkled with excitement the moment he noticed it could move when worn. With a blank expression, Lin Yuan asked if he genuinely liked the nose cover. The blonde enthusiastically replied that it was unique and offered to buy it at any cost. A nearby soldier apologized, explaining that their leader was always like this. Lin Yuan simply tossed the red ball toward him and said, "Take it as a gift." Though the blonde insisted on paying, the hero declined and turned away. As he walked off, a pair of wings appeared behind him, an ethereal effect that moved the blonde to tears. To him, Lin Yuan looked like an angel. Meanwhile, the others stood silently, confused, wondering why would anyone want to pay for that. Later, the scene shifted to a quiet church. Two hooded figures stood guard at its doors. Inside, Lin Yuan applied the fish oil potion to a sick man lying on a bed. As the potion soaked into his skin, the man's chest began to glow. He gasped in disbelief that Lin Yuan had managed to retrieve such a rare ingredient. A system notification appeared, confirming that the quest was completed and the reward granted. Lin Yuan held up the green spirit blade, the first gold growth sword he had acquired in his past life. The weapon boosted physical attack, magic damage, and spirit stats. More importantly, it came with a skill, Green Spirit Curse Seal. Although its base stats were ordinary for a gold tier weapon, the skill's combat potential was exceptional. It allowed the blade to accumulate energy and inflict bonus damage after 3 consecutive hits. Lin Yuan remembered how this very blade had helped him rise to become the strongest mage of his time. As the memory of his past struggles flashed through his mind, he looked down at the weapon once more. In addition to the blade, he also received 1,000 reputation points with both the main city and the Scorpion Tail Knights. Although his standing with them was still neutral, the points were enough to allow him to roam freely through their territories. Yet another reward caught his eye. His affinity with Doug had increased significantly due to the outstanding completion of the quest. Now sitting up in bed, Doug looked at his own hands and remarked how everything felt different this time. He sincerely thanked Lin Yuan, admitting he would have died without him. Lin Yuan responded humbly, saying it was the least he could do. But Doug's tone shifted as he gave a grave warning. He spoke of a man named Quincy, a mysterious and dangerous figure who wore a plague mask. Doug urged Lin Yuan to avoid him at all costs. But then Lin Yuan revealed, with quiet conviction, that Quincy was his mentor, and questioned why Doug would warn him against the very man who had guided him. Doug froze, visibly shaken, unable to hide his astonishment upon discovering that the formidable and dangerous figure he had spoken of was the young hero's teacher. Collecting himself, Doug pressed on. Despite Lin Yuan's careful efforts to keep his true profession hidden, Doug knew with certainty that the young man was in fact a necromancer. Lin Yuan was stunned, confused as to how his secret had been exposed, when even someone as perceptive as Quincy had failed to see through his disguise. Doug then explained that he had once served as a Scorpion Knight, a warrior order specialized in the eradication of necromancers. As part of their training, he had acquired a rare ability known as Dark Perception, a skill exclusive to the Order, designed specifically to detect the presence of necromantic energy. The ability activated automatically, and its pull intensified the closer he drew to his target. When Lin Yuan asked whether Doug had known all along, surprised by the existence of such a targeted countermeasure, Doug clarified that he hadn't noticed at first, having been weakened by poison. But now, with a clear mind, the unmistakable aura of the Lord of Darkness was impossible to miss. Preparing to shed light on what Lin Yuan truly represented, Doug began recounting an ancient tale, one that traced back to the world's earliest divine mythologies. Most knew of the 5 primary gods, the god of light, the moon shadow monarch, and others revered by the people, but few knew of the 6th, the most powerful of them all, the Lord of Darkness, also called the King of the Undead. Doug continued, explaining how this god, drunk on his own strength, descended into arrogance and tyranny. Amassing a fanatical following, he granted immense dark powers to his most devout believers, transforming them into necromancers who carried out his will. Under his ruthless command, these agents unleashed a plague that devastated nations and claimed millions of lives. The Lord of Darkness even turned his own subordinates into undead puppets, spreading chaos and catastrophe. In response, the world's nations united to resist his reign. His temples were torn down, his scriptures burned, and a decree was issued to execute any necromancer on sight. Thus, the practice became forbidden, shunned, and labeled a dangerous taboo. Doug then revealed that his own 10-year affliction had been caused by necromancer poison, leaving him hopeless until the arrival of the young hero. Reflecting on it all, Lin Yuan silently opened his status screen, recalling his past as a simple mage, oblivious to the world's darkest truths. It now made sense why his class was so feared, and why he had to hide it. With his aura tied directly to the Lord of Darkness, he realized that discovery meant certain death. Investigating the city's secrets had become a gamble bill he could no longer afford. When he asked Doug if there was any way to counteract the Scorpion Knight's dark perception, Doug answered grimly, only Quincy might be able to help. But if his mentor ever discovered the truth, he would kill Lin Yuan without hesitation. Then came the heartbreaking revelation. It was a necromancer who had murdered Quincy's beloved wife. Doug urged Lin Yuan to keep his distance from the man, warning that no amount of history or loyalty could save him if the truth came to light. Lin Yuan offered no reply. After departing the city, he walked silently across the barren gravel wasteland, a system notification confirming his return to the desolate region. In a flashback, Doug called him insane for even thinking about approaching Quincy, knowing the man's hatred ran deep. But Lin Yuan had replied plainly, he had no other choice. Traveling with the Stark Guild or Group A was too risky now. Venturing into other maps or entering the main city had become increasingly difficult. It was a problem that had to be resolved, urgently. Suddenly, an attack erupted in front of him, one of the blasts exploding nearby. He quickly steadied himself and readied for combat. Looking up toward a sand dune, he spotted a group of figures. A familiar-shadowed figure called out mockingly, reminding him that he'd merely gotten lucky last time. But this time, they had brought over 30 men. 2 others stepped forward, a swordsman and a tankard, each bearing smug grins, eager to see the so-called hero fall. The swordsman sneered, telling Lin Yuan to scream loudly this time, just before his head hits the ground. A small robotic insect buzzed through the desert air, its camera lens focusing on a lone figure surrounded by dozens of hostile players. The live feed streamed directly to countless screens across the city, commuters on crowded trains, workers clustered around office monitors, and people on the street all turned to watch as a notification flashed. Bloodstained Guild Live. A sinister voice welcomed viewers to the stream, the Vice Guild Master grinning with a finger across his throat, promising a brutal show. In one office, someone muttered if Bloodstain was really doing another newbie-crushing stream, while on the street, a man gasped at the 30-to-1 odds, wondering who the poor soul was that had crossed the guild. Some viewers recognized the hero, whispering that he looked familiar, while a girl sighed that it was a shame for such a handsome man to die like this. But the lone figure didn't flinch. Calmly, he said the guild's warriors weren't even a warm-up. Since they came here to die, he'd just have to kill them again. Enraged, the guild master bellowed the order, and his forces charged, rushing from every direction. A hooded mage chanted as blue lightning crackled in his hands. An archer knocked a glowing arrow and screamed for the hero to die, while armored warriors leapt high, weapons raised to crush him from above. Just then, a system notification appeared before the hero, confirming the malicious attack and granting him 15 minutes of combat without penalty. He smirked, gripping his new sword, and thought that 15 minutes was more than enough to kill them 3 times over. With a sharp command, he unleashed his power, summoning a horde of monstrous undead. A kobold lunged first, its massive pickaxe smashing the mage's lightning spell to pieces. The hero scoffed from above, mocking them for calling such a tiny spark thunder, before ordering his thunder scorpion zombie forward. The monstrous creature scuttled into the enemy ranks, releasing a suffocating cloud of purple poison that rolled across the battlefield. Desperate to counter, the guild leader ordered his warriors into a shield wall, while the archers fired volleys of glowing arrows from the dunes. The arrows struck, but the damage was pitiful, barely scratching the undead army. Viewers mocked the guild's weak display, and the live stream's numbers began to dip. The Vice Guild Master sneered, claiming that even with summons, the hero would soon be torn apart. But the hero only gave a cold smile, his shadowed face radiating confidence. The Guild Master faltered, unnerved by that smile, and then everything changed. The live chat exploded with shocked messages as a brilliant golden light erupted beneath the guild's mages, blasting them skyward before a swirling vortex dragged them screaming into its depths. Their front line braced for the zombie assault, but death struck from behind instead. A masked bandit froze as a zombie wolf appeared out of nowhere, its claws slicing through him, while green energy flared across the battlefield, ripping into the backline. Kobolds stormed in, swinging heavy weapons, and the guild's formation collapsed in chaos. Cries for help filled the desert as warriors were overwhelmed, their shield wall shattered by poisoned wounds that healers couldn't mend. One frantic healer screamed for his allies to cleanse the venom before healing, but another blast of green energy tore through them, scattering bodies across the sand. The battlefield became a slaughterhouse as the guild's elite force was dismantled piece by piece. Meanwhile, the hero stood at the center of the chaos, hand glowing faint blue, his expression calm and commanding. Every movement of his fingers shifted the battle's flow, his undead army tearing through the bloodstained guild with ruthless precision, while viewers across the world stared in stunned silence as the supposed underdog turned the massacre into a performance of his own. Suddenly, the hero's senses sharpen as a ripple distorts his vision, an unseen danger closing in. His instincts flare, and he whirls around just in time, raising his sword to block a lethal strike from an invisible attacker. The clash echoes with a sharp metallic clang, forcing the bandit out of stealth as he stumbles back in shock. His eyes widen, stunned that his stealth had been broken so effortlessly, and he demands to know how the hero saw through his technique. Standing over him, blade steady and gaze cold, the hero replies with quiet conviction that only a fool would expect him not to anticipate a hidden strike in the desert sands. Without hesitation, he dispatches the bandit, then turns his gaze to the last remnants of the Bloodstained Guild. His glowing green sword hums with an ominous resonance, radiating immense spiritual energy. With a single powerful swing, he unleashes its true ability, sending forth a storm of ghastly green souls that streak across the battlefield like hunting spirits. Their ghostly forms screech through the air, closing in on the terrified survivors. Suddenly, the energy coalesces, and a colossal spectral skull materializes, casting its shadow over the desert. The air grows heavy with dread as the sword's ultimate skill, the Green Soul Curse, takes form. The cursed skull looms over the Vice Guild Master, its monstrous jaws yawning wide, ready to devour him whole. His bravado crumbles instantly, his face twisted with terror as he realizes what is about to descend upon him. The hero lowers his blade, his expression as calm as stone, and utters a single command, ordering the curse to execute its prey without mercy. With a thunderous stomp, he locks the curse into place, the earth shuddering beneath him. Then, silence falls. A glowing number appears in his vision, 3. The countdown ticks to 2. A bead of sweat slides down the Vice Guild Master's face as he stands paralyzed, his fear choking the very air around him. The number shifts to 1. And in that instant, the Green Soul Curse detonates. A cataclysmic explosion of spectral energy consumes the battlefield, tearing through the warriors in an eruption of green fire and ash. When the dust clears, a massive crater scars the desert floor. Nothing remains of the enemy but scorched earth and broken bodies. Standing amidst the carnage, the hero remains eerily composed, like a puppet master who has severed the strings of fate itself. As the smoke fades, only one enemy remains, the guild leader. His body trembles violently, weapon clattering to the ground as he collapses to his knees, begging for his life. His pleas echo into the dead silence of the battlefield, but the hero does not flinch. To make his point clear, he casually finishes off one of the groaning, half-dead guild members nearby, his green blade flashing mercilessly. Then he turns, his full attention locked on the last survivor. His voice cuts through the silence, cold and absolute, as he tells the guild leader that now it is his turn to taste despair. With a single decisive strike, the glowing blade descends, ending the man's life in a flash of green light. The wasteland falls quiet, the echoes of the battle swallowed by the desert winds. Later that night, the hero steps into a rundown tavern, its dim lanterns casting long shadows across cracked wooden floors. At a corner table, a hooded man with a thick beard sits alone, the weight of years etched into his face. This is Quincy, his mentor. The old warrior's jaw clenches as he looks up, his expression burning with fury. His eyes narrow as a faint crackle of blue energy flares in his hand, recognition dawning in his gaze. He can feel it, the dark, oppressive aura surrounding the young man before him. Quincy's voice trembles with rage as he names it for what it is. The hero he once knew now carries the unmistakable presence of a necromancer. His eyes glow like embers in a storm, filled with anger at the revelation of what his student has become. The mentor's voice thundered as he roared in disbelief, demanding how a necromancer could dare to show his face before him, and without hesitation he unleashed a devastating attack, sending a massive barrage of razor-sharp ice shards tearing through the air toward the young man. Yet in a blur of motion, the hero vanished from sight, slipping past the lethal storm with effortless speed as the shards shattered into the ground where he had stood only a heartbeat before, leaving Quincy stunned, his mind reeling at how impossibly fast the youth had moved. Before the older man could even process it, a hand appeared suddenly before his face, and in the blink of an eye the young hero was already behind him, closing the distance so quickly that Quincy's defenses meant nothing. Completely caught off guard, the mentor froze as the youth pressed his advantage, moving like lightning until he stood behind his mentor with his sword already drawn, the gleaming blade resting at Quincy's throat. Calm and unshaken, the young man asked if they could finally talk. Still on the ground and very much at his mercy, Quincy tilted his head up, his voice carrying the weight of old wounds as he asked what the boy truly wanted. With steady resolve, the hero explained that he needed a way to hide his aura. At that, Quincy sighed deeply, his shoulders heavy with memories, and admitted he would offer him a hint, if only as repayment for the humiliating defeat. A flashback surged to life, revealing a haunting memory of Quincy locked in a brutal battle long ago against a powerful necromancer. one of the Lord of Darkness's most loyal servants. After a merciless and bloody struggle, Quincy struck the necromancer down, but the victory came at a horrific cost, for his wife, who had tried to heal his wounds, was cursed in the process, her very soul corrupted by darkness and twisted into a monster stripped of all memory and barred from reincarnation. To end her torment, Quincy was forced to destroy her soul with his own hands, and the trauma left him unable to even hold a sword. Many believed he would live out his days drowning in sorrow, but instead he posted a mysterious mission that caught the world's eye, promising his entire fortune to anyone who could save his wife and offering a special treasure to any necromancer who dared to try. In truth, the offer was never salvation but a trap, bait meant to draw necromancers into his snare so they could pay the ultimate price for his loss. To this day, countless powerful adventurers who accepted the mission never returned alive, swallowed by the cursed quest. Back in the tavern, the young hero pressed his sword closer to his mentor's throat, demanding to know everything about this so-called mission, and Quincy's lips curled into a strange smile as he told the boy that since he had asked, he would now play the game, with his dear wife as the centerpiece. A sudden system notification flashed brightly before the hero's eyes, declaring a silver-grade mission. The objective was to liberate Quincy's wife and lay her tortured soul to rest. The young man's expression did not waver. His eyes stayed calm, his resolve sharp as steel, as he accepted the dangerous task without hesitation. With a grim smile, Quincy wished him luck, admitting that perhaps he might truly succeed where others had fallen, though he added one last chilling taunt, daring him to crawl back alive with his body still intact. Following the mission's lead, the hero soon found himself standing before a grim fortress perched on a jagged cliffside, a place known as the Black Gravel Town Memorial for the Dead. Entering the fortress, he walked alone down a long, echoing stone hallway shrouded in darkness, where the silence pressed in on all sides. To navigate the pitch-black interior, he drank a night vision potion, his crimson eyes glowing with an eerie light as his sight sharpened in the gloom. He summoned his undead companions, a thunder scorpion and a pack of kobolds, to accompany him through the treacherous halls. As he advanced, the young man recalled that the memorial stretched across 5 floors, each one a resting place for the town's dead NPCs. Suddenly, a zombie with glowing green eyes lunged out from the shadows with a savage roar, but before it could even reach its target, the thunder scorpion lashed forward, its massive venomous tail piercing through the undead's chest and dropping it instantly. The young hero knew the deeper he went, the more monstrous the enemies would become. The first floor, filled with weak zombies between levels 1 and 3, was nothing but an appetizer. The second floor brought armored skeletons between levels 4 and 6, more disciplined and harder to break. The third floor would unleash malevolent ghosts between levels 7 and 9, far trickier opponents. And on the fourth floor, he finally encountered a grotesque abomination, a massive tentacled ghoul crouched over the mangled bodies of its victims, its aura radiating dread. This horrifying creature, a level 10 monstrosity, was by far the most dangerous enemy yet. After cutting his way through and surviving the bloody trial, he finally reached the end of the fourth floor, where a swirling portal pulsed with ominous energy, guarded by his loyal minions, waiting to transport him to the final challenge that would decide everything. Determined not to waste time with weaker prey, the young hero decided to push straight to the fourth floor in one relentless stride, ignoring the lower levels entirely as he advanced deeper into the fortress until at last he emerged into the vast and desolate chamber of the mourner's sanctuary. The air here felt heavy with dread, and in the stillness he caught the faint sound of movement, his gaze snapping into the darkness where dozens of crimson eyes began to glow like burning coals, piercing through the shadows with menace. From the gloom, a grotesque, green-skinned monster with jagged horns and wicked claws scuttled up the cold stone walls, its twisted body moving with unnatural speed. Soon more of its kind appeared, crawling along walls and ceilings with an insect-like frenzy until the entire chamber seemed alive with their writhing forms. A status window flickered before his eyes, identifying them as elite ghouls, level 10 abominations armed with savage strength and deadly poison abilities, their corrupted bite capable of rotting flesh within moments. An entire horde swarmed into the hall at once, activating their poisonous skills and rushing him with gnashing teeth, yet the hero remained steady and unfazed by the overwhelming numbers, his voice cutting sharp through the chaos as he issued a single command for his undead to attack. With a thunderous roar, his massive thunder scorpion answered, slamming its colossal pincers down with its ripping pincer ability, sending a violent shockwave tearing across the chamber, hurling multiple ghouls backward into the walls. The enormous beast stood unyielding, its armored body braced as it lashed its venomous tail in a wide, brutal arc, skewering several of the creatures and flinging their twitching bodies aside. Without hesitation, the hero surged forward, his shining blade flashing as he leapt into the fray, his voice cold as he demanded his enemies enemies die. His sword sliced through one ghoul cleanly, splitting its chest with a searing strike that sent the monster screaming in agony before collapsing into a fading glow. With fluid motion, he spun with tremendous force, his blade carving through another ghoul and hurling its broken body into a vortex of green energy. Landing with precision, he glanced down at a writhing ghoul struggling weakly on the cracked stone floor, and with a final decisive strike to its skull, he silenced it forever. Not a single enemy had escaped his wrath. Victorious amidst the carnage, a bright notification appeared, confirming he had leveled up to 12. Breathing steady, he reflected on the clash, pleased that the battle had ended far quicker than he anticipated, though his thoughts darkened when he considered the limits of his summoning powers. Reviving corpses was useful, but it would mean nothing against spiritual foes. Suddenly, his instincts screamed as his eyes darted upward, and in that instant, a colossal bolt of purple energy crashed down from above, exploding against the ground where he had stood and filling the air with a violent storm of crackling darkness. Shock flooded him as he raised his sword against the torrent, the overwhelming purple energy swallowing his vision until he was dragged violently into a twisting vortex. When his sight cleared, the scene had shifted into a vast throne room, illuminated by eerie blue flames that licked against towering stone pillars, their glow casting dreadful shadows toward a massive throne at its heart. The force of the dark flames hurled him backward, but he dug his sword into the ground to anchor himself, stopping his body from being swept away. To his horror, he realized he was now trapped within a glowing purple cage suspended by thick chains, the prison crackling with unnatural energy. Landing hard on the solid ground of this new battlefield, he steadied himself, his crimson eyes scanning the corrupted chamber as a sense of impending danger closed in. From the darkness ahead floated a woman cloaked in demonic majesty, her long twisted horns and cruel smile framed by a glowing glass-like prison that shattered in a thunderous explosion as she burst free. Laughing with menace, she licked her lips and declared that she had waited far too long for this moment. With a sudden surge of horrifying strength, she tore apart her chains, debris scattering across the hall as her dark aura flared wildly. Her status appeared before him in chilling clarity. Level 18 boss, the wretched corpse spirit, wielding lethal abilities and hungering for fresh flesh and blood. His stomach sank as realization struck. He had been dragged straight into the 5th floor, now face to face with the final boss. The corpse spirit drifted closer, her crooked grin promising carnage, and with a violent cry she lashed out, vowing to tear him apart. The young hero reacted instantly, raising his sword just in time to block her swift and devastating strike, their powers colliding in a violent burst that shook the room. A system notification blinked across his vision. She had activated her special ability, Corpse Bloom. The ground cracked open beneath his feet as thorn-covered tendrils shot upward, dripping with corrosive purple poison that hissed where it touched the stone. He leapt back with agility, creating space to avoid the initial blast as the vicious tendrils lashed toward him, their poison splattering dangerously close. Tightening his grip on his blade, he steadied his breathing, his voice cold and defiant as he declared that such an attack was useless against him, his body already poised to strike back with unyielding resolve. Dark purple energy seeped insidiously into the young man's blade as he hacked through the writhing tendrils, the corruption twisting and feeding upon his spiritual power until his weapon pulsed with a sinister glow. Tightening his grip, he redirected that same darkness, channeling it into his own attack. Shadowy appendages burst forth from the ground like living chains, lashing upward to ensnare the corpse spirit. They wrapped around her in a crushing embrace, binding her limbs and coiling tightly across her body. For the first time, her mocking confidence cracked. Her crimson eyes widened as she realized the sheer weight of his power, and she let out a furious, ear-splitting scream that shook the chamber. The system flared with a warning. She had begun casting her next ability, the dreaded Banshee's Wail. The hero braced himself, unsure if the skill would unleash a wide-range blast or summon allies to her side. A piercing shriek erupted, vibrating through the cavernous hall with such force that the ancient stone coffins lining the walls began to tremble violently. Dust rained down as the slabs cracked, until one finally shattered apart in a shower of debris. His eyes narrowed as a skeletal hand, glowing with an eerie green light, clawed its way out from the coffin's depths. His expression hardened, the grim truth set in. These were not random undead. These were the fallen NPCs of Black Sand Town, laid to rest in this very memorial. Worse still, he realized with horror that even the spirits of all challengers who had perished on Quincy's cursed quest were now being resurrected to fight at the boss's command. With bony claws scraping stone, the resurrected clawed their way free one after another, their bodies cloaked in a sickly green aura as they let out bone-chilling screeches. The horde seemed endless, crawling from every coffin like a tide of death itself. He clenched his jaw, frustration burning in his chest. This was far beyond what he had anticipated. The boss was resurrecting every corpse in the memorial. If he didn't act quickly, he would be buried under a sea of the dead. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and issued a sharp command. In an instant, his zombie kobold minions and the hulking thunder scorpion materialized at his side, their glowing eyes locking onto the skeletal army. His orders were precise: form a defensive line and seal the gates, stop the flood of undead at its source, and buy him the precious time he needed to take down the spirit herself. The minions obeyed with mechanical precision, weapons clashing as they slammed coffins shut and stood shoulder to shoulder against the tide. Then, with a chilling roar, he commanded them into their bloodlust state. One zombie kobold cracked its thorn whip against the scorpion's armored hide, howling fiercely to empower its allies. A notification blinked before him. The thunder scorpion had entered bloodlust. Their eyes burned a violent red, their bodies trembling with unnatural fury, raw power coursing through them until they looked less like minions and more like rabid beasts unleashed. United in rage, they hurled themselves at the skeletal horde, the battlefield erupting into a storm of bone, venom, and steel. Confident his summons would hold the line, the hero turned his full attention back to the corpse spirit. With a surge of focus, he slammed his palm into the ground, summoning forth jagged earthen claws to seize her. But Quincy's wife countered in an instant, her power surging as she released a crushing strike that shattered the stone floor itself. The violent shockwave ripped through the chamber, scattering debris and forcing both fighters to reposition. Hovering effortlessly above the destruction, she gazed down with icy arrogance, while he steadied himself, expression calm, his sharp eyes never leaving her. With a mocking laugh, she declared that as a bordering spirit, she was immune to most physical attacks. Yet the hero's lips curved into a knowing smirk as he revealed her fatal flaw: she was vulnerable to magic, taking double damage from it. Without hesitation, he leapt high into the air, invoking the dreaded Green Soul Curse. Shadows coiled around his blade, forming a torrent of ghostly energy as the curse surged toward her. Alarm flickered across her face as she raised her arms defensively, bracing herself for the onslaught. The chamber lit up as the curse descended, but to his shock, she twisted her body with newfound speed, darting through the air and narrowly avoiding the full brunt of his magic. She was faster now, much faster than before. Below, his kobolds were beginning to falter, their line breaking as the endless wave of skeletons pressed harder and harder. If this continued, his army would be overwhelmed, and he would lose his only shield against the horde. He needed to end the fight now. Reaching into his inventory, his hand closed around a silver band glinting faintly with runes. Sliding it onto his finger, he clenched his fist as sparks of energy ignited. The paralysis ring, a relic with the rare ability to briefly immobilize its target. The chance of success was slim, but it was the only opening he had. With a burst of determination, he launched himself forward, green sword blazing, and aimed a decisive strike at the corpse spirit. As his blade swung in a deadly arc, the ring's latent power surged, releasing its paralyzing effect in a final gamble to turn the battle in his favor. His supercharged punch struck with earth-shaking force, sending a surge of energy straight through the vengeful spirit's body. Instantly, the paralysis toxin took hold, locking her in place as a wave of numbing energy spread across her ghostly form. The young man's voice cut through the air, calm yet filled with lethal intent. He wasn't finished. With a flick of his hand, another massive spectral skull materialized, its hollow eyes blazing as it descended. The impact detonated like a bomb, engulfing the immobilized boss in a colossal explosion of raw magical energy. The blast launched her across the chamber, slamming her hard into the distant wall as dust and debris filled the air. Landing lightly, the hero stood amidst the chaos, eyes steady as he watched her fall. A faint smirk curved his lips. Her defenses were better than expected, but he could already tell her movements had slowed since the curse took effect. Without hesitation, he summoned a towering spectral wolf that materialized beside him, its glowing eyes fixed on the spirit. A system alert flashed. Skill activated Wolf Howl. The wolf's deafening cry reverberated through the tomb, striking the boss like a sonic hammer. Another alert confirmed it. Target stunned. Confidently, he whispered that 5 seconds was more than enough to end her. His blade ignited with spectral energy as he lunged forward, slashing with inhuman speed. Each strike carved into her shadowy form, sending flashes of damage numbers dancing in the air. The vengeful spirit grit her teeth, her spectral skin cracking under the relentless assault as dark energy bled out. But the moment the stun wore off, she roared in fury, her body trembling with overflowing power. A system warning flared before his eyes. Boss skill activated. Corpse explosion. All around him, the undead skeletons she had resurrected began to detonate one after another, releasing a chain reaction of violet explosions. The devastating blasts ripped through the tomb, consuming everything in their path, including his own summoned zombies. The entire chamber quaked as the violent explosions tore it apart, the shockwaves echoing through the ancient stone. He instantly grasped her strategy. She was sacrificing the undead army to bring the entire Toon down on them both. When the chaos subsided, smoke and dust filled the ruins. His forces had been decimated. Barely 1/3 of his zombie army remained standing. Across the shattered battlefield, the vengeful spirit glared at him, her power flickering, her body cracking apart under the strain. Cold determination filled his eyes. This was the end. Leaping into the air, he gathered the remaining energy in his body and unleashed one final attack, the Green Soul Curse. Dozens of spectral skulls formed behind him, spiraling together before crashing down in a blinding explosion of spiritual energy. The spirit screamed as the magic tore through her essence, unable to withstand the final onslaught. System notifications flooded his vision. Boss in near-death state. HP 300, 130. Her life force drained rapidly until, with one last burst of energy, she shattered into glowing fragments. Boss defeated. Experience gained. The chamber fell silent. He landed softly on the cracked stone, surrounded by the remnants of battle. For a long moment, he stood motionless, the adrenaline fading, wondering if his long, punishing quest was finally over. Then, faint orbs of purple light began to rise from the ground, swirling gracefully around him. The light slowly took form, an ethereal woman, serene and sorrowful, gazing at him with gratitude. In a soft voice, she thanked the brave human for freeing her soul. It was the true spirit of Quincy's wife, finally released from torment. She smiled one last time before her form dissolved into shimmering dust, leaving behind a radiant golden ring with a violet gem that drifted gently into his palm. The system confirmed it, an unsellable mission item, a token of eternal love between Quincy and his wife. The young man looked at the ring quietly, disappointment flickering across his face as he wondered if this sentimental trinket was his only reward. Before he could ponder further, a sudden surge of dark energy filled the air. A mysterious book appeared before him, its cover adorned with a grinning skull, floating amid a swirl of purple mist. He looked up, eyes narrowing, curiosity and wariness mixing in his gaze as he wondered, just what kind of power had he awakened now? He learns that the terrifying corpse explosion skill the boss used is not just any spell, but an exclusive ability for necromancer hunters, and he wonders if he gained it only because the vengeful spirit was once a direct subordinate of the Lord of Darkness. A notification soon confirms his suspicion, announcing that the skill book is being automatically etched into his memory as radiant light envelops him, growing brighter until the knowledge fully fuses with his being. The golden ranked skill grants him the ability to detonate one of his zombies at will, unleashing a fiery explosion that deals devastating damage to all enemies nearby. Though it comes at the cost of consuming his own minions, he cannot help but smile at its destructive range and raw power, a trade he is more than willing to make. Sometime later, he returns to the quiet town of Black Sand to report back to his mentor, carrying with him both the ring and the heavy truth of what he has witnessed. He solemnly presents the ring to Quincy, who freezes in shock, recognizing it instantly as the engagement ring he once gave to his wife. With trembling hands, Quincy explains that when a soul is finally freed, it leaves behind its most cherished possession as a final keepsake. His voice cracks as he asks if his beloved wife was truly free from suffering at last. The young hero gently confirms that she was at peace, and as Quincy clutches the ring, a single tear falls from his weathered face onto the precious memento, his body shaking with grief and relief. He weeps openly, grateful that the woman he loved more than anything has finally been freed from her torment. With bittersweet irony, he admits that the one who granted him this closure was the very necromancer he once despised. As promised, he fulfills his end of the bargain, summoning a mysterious book that radiates dark energy. The book opens to reveal a glowing crown, the fabled crown of darkness, an item designed to mask its wearer's sin value and suppress the ominous aura of the undead. Though it carries no additional effects, the hero knows instantly that this is exactly what he needs to move freely in the city without being exposed. A system prompt asks if he wishes to equip it, and with a simple command he agrees. The crown shines with a brilliant green glow, a magic circle forming beneath his feet as shadows swirl around him, the artifact manifesting upon his head. A dark aura floods outward before fading, and he feels himself one step closer to uncovering the truth. A notification welcomes him back into the city, and as the towering gates open, he steps into a metropolis buzzing with life, where guilds of all sizes shout from the crowded streets, each one desperate to recruit new members. He notes that while many guilds exist, only 10 are recognized as true powerhouses. their banners dominating the cityscape. Pushing through the recruiters and hawkers, he reflects that gaining entry into one of the major guilds will not be an easy feat for a newcomer like him. He presses on, determined to find the right opportunity, his lone figure threading through the sea of strangers with focused resolve. On a quieter street, his pace slows, his senses prickling with sudden awareness, when the blonde warrior he once met during the fish monster quest suddenly freezes nearby. Before the man can react, the cold edge of the hero's SAR blade rests firmly on his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. Shock flashes across the warrior's eyes as he looks up to see the familiar face of the one he has been searching for, and his initial fear quickly shifts to joy as he realizes who stands before him. Shouting with excitement, he calls out the hero's in-game name, confirming beyond all doubt that it is really him. Overcome with relief, the blonde warrior suddenly drops to his knees, bowing dramatically at the hero's feet, while the young man looks down with a weary, almost exasperated expression at his overly theatrical companion. The warrior beams, ecstatic that the hero remembers him, but the hero eyes him suspiciously, demanding to know how he could possibly know his name. With pride, the blonde explains that he recognized him from the Bloodstain Guide's livestream, boasting that he spent $2 million just to sift through thousands of comments for a lead on his location. The hero is stunned, incredulous that anyone would go to such absurd lengths, but the warrior only smirks and brags further, revealing that he spent another $2 million to upgrade his guild's facial recognition system to confirm the match. Casually, he adds that his family's company, the Dahan Group, often spends millions on system tests alone, a statement that makes the hero pause in surprise. Realizing the Dahan Group is not only legitimate but a global giant, he wonders what other secrets this seemingly clueless yet powerful companion might be hiding. Lin Yuan's new companion, the overly enthusiastic blonde man, excitedly invites him to join an S-class hunt in the Bloodscale Cavern the following morning. But before the man can even finish his sentence, Lin Yuan slams his foot down with such force that the ground trembles, sending the loud warrior flying face first onto the asphalt. Cold and dismissive, Lin Yuan walks away, refusing to waste his time arguing with a fool, but the blonde man dusts himself off and nods in agreement, remarking that someone strong enough to lead a guild alone doesn't need anyone else. He tries once more to persuade him, mentioning that the Black Tree Guild will be at the hunt to recruit fresh talent, words that immediately catch Lin Yuan's attention, since Black Tree is counted among the top 10 most powerful factions in the city. For a moment, silence hangs in the air, and the blonde warrior sighs in defeat, believing his chance is gone. But then, without turning back, Lin Yuan quietly asks him the exact time of the hunt. The stunned man looks up in disbelief, his despair flipping instantly into overwhelming joy when Lin Yuan confirms his interest. Shouting with excitement, he blurts out that the hunt begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. Unable to hide his happiness, he trails alongside Lin Yuan, who tells him to address him properly as Lin Yuan, and adds that he needs to prepare before leaving. His new ally covers his mouth in shock, barely believing this sudden change of heart. Later, far from the bustling city, a black flag bearing a skull flutters ominously above a desolate camp, the headquarters of the Vulture Band of Thieves, a place reeking of danger. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion tears through the compound, collapsing structures and setting the night ablaze. Out of the dust and fire steps Lin Yuan, flanked by a disciplined horde of undead kobolds, his confident smile widening as he locks eyes on the true leader of the bandits. A status window reveals the undead vulture thieves to be level 12, each armed with the deadly sickle throw skill, yet Lin Yuan remains calm, clenching his fist as he orders his undead army to advance. Inside the hall, the original thieves screech like monstrous carrion birds, their crimson eyes glowing as they brandish curved scythes. With unwavering focus, Lin Yuan raises his hand and commands his legion to charge, and the battlefield erupts into chaos, his zombies clashing violently with the shrieking thieves, the air swirling with green energy. One of the airborne enemies activates Sickle Throw, launching a spinning blade toward Lin Yuan, but the young necromancer stands motionless until the weapon slams harmlessly into the stone at his feet, barely missing him. Shock ripples across the monster's face as Lin Yuan vanishes from its sight and reappears behind it, his good sword already slicing downward with lethal precision. A notification confirms the kill, and soon system messages flood his vision, tallying dozens of slain thieves as his undead carve through them with spectral fury. Standing amid the carnage, sword gleaming with spiritual energy, Lin Yuan knows the real battle is only beginning. The true leader has yet to appear. A new status window announces the arrival of the Vulture Lord, a powerful enemy armed with the dreaded Bad Step skill. From the shadows, the boss launches itself forward, roaring as it hacks into Lin Yuan's minions with feral rage, but the Necromancer calmly counters, activating Corpse Explosion. A massive green detonation erupts from the ground, shaking the camp and swallowing everything in blinding light as the battle with the true enemy finally begins. Caught within the devastating blast, the Vulture Thief Lord shrieked in agony, his body wreathed in a sinister red aura as cracks split the walls around him, the very ground trembling under the immense force of the magical explosion. From the smoke above, Lin Yuan descended like a shadowy comet, his body crackling with raw energy, eyes glowing with deadly focus as he drew back his fist for the finishing strike. A system notification flashed, shadow gloves activated, heat lenses supercharged, and his blazing fist smashed into the boss with earth-shattering force, a vow upon his lips to send this creature to its grave. The impact erupted into a massive pillar of light, a shockwave ripping through the grand hall, toppling debris in every direction. Landing firmly amidst the ruins, Lin Yuan declared the fight over, his words soon confirmed as notifications announced the boss's death and his own level up. Breathing steadily, he opened his status to review his growing arsenal, his golden tier Dark Curse and Corpse Explosion abilities radiating with frightening potential. Another prompt appeared, offering to use a skill upgrade scroll, and without hesitation he accepted, recalling how his previous scroll had enhanced both skills simultaneously. His victory was further sweetened as a notification reported 130 newly revived zombies added to his ranks, strengthening his undead army. Yet the true prize revealed itself when the fallen Vulture Thief Lord reappeared under his control, now transformed into a level 15 zombie. Curious, Lin Yuan inspected the details, wondering if reviving a higher-class monster might grant bonus skills. His theory was proven correct when a new status window confirmed the undead leader possessed Poison Hand, much like how the Great Wolf had once gained Undead's Rage upon resurrection. Before he could savor the discovery further, another alert rang out. The Bloodscale Cavern hunting event would begin in only 2 hours. Draping a dark cloak around himself, Lin Yuan left the ruins behind and made his way to the designated meeting point. Soon the towering, ominous entrance to the cavern loomed before him, and standing there, waiting impatiently, was his companion. But something immediately felt off. Lin Yuan paused, narrowing his eyes as he asked why the blonde warrior was standing stiffly like a golden statue clad in gleaming custom armor. With pride swelling in his chest, the man boasted that he had spent 50 gold coins on the set, determined not to drag the team down. Yet before he could finish flexing, a metallic snap echoed, and the bottom half of his armor crumbled apart, falling to the ground and leaving him awkwardly exposed in nothing but his undergarments, the leg pieces tangled around his ankles. Lin Yuan stared in stunned silence, a bead of sweat running down his cheek as he deadpanned that this was the first armor he had ever seen designed to separate itself, sarcastically calling it a very special invention. Flustered, the blonde stammered that the blacksmith had promised it was the latest and most advanced model, only now realizing with gritted teeth that he had been conned. As he fumbled to adjust his gear, his helmet slipped down over his eyes, blinding him completely, and he stumbled about in panic, calling desperately for Lin Yuan's help. But instead of aid, he tripped straight into the chest of a looming figure. Strong hands lifted the helmet off his face, revealing the man's embarrassed expression as he finally looked up into the cold, intimidating gaze of a tall, bald warrior, his presence radiating menace. A status window appeared in Lin Yuan's vision, clearly identifying the stranger's name, Zhao Kui. At the cave's entrance, a leader from the Black Tree Guild turned his sharp gaze toward the blonde warrior, asking with a falsely friendly tone if he was all right, though the man's snake-like aura carried a suffocating sense of danger. Before Han Chung could react, the leader suddenly grabbed the back of his collar, yanking him back with startling strength. Lin Yuan stepped in with cold authority, ordering his companion to remove the ridiculous golden armor, while the guild leader smirked, his unsettling eyes locked onto Lin Yuan with visible annoyance, clearly irritated that this kid dared to return his stare with such defiance. Just as the tension grew heavier, a new group arrived at the cavern entrance, their leader calling out for someone named Han Chung. Holding up a file with both a name and a photo, he read it aloud before scanning the crowd, his eyes landing on the awkward blonde in shining armor. Pointing at him immediately, he identified Han Chung as the swordsman they were looking for, and laughter erupted around the group as they mocked him for showing up to an S-class hunt in what looked like a costume. Red-faced, Han Chung waved nervously, introducing himself before quickly pointing to Lin Yuan as his chosen partner for the event. A guild member unsheathed his sword, the blade glinting dangerously in the sunlight, as he warned that the only reason they were allowed to bring an extra person was because their leader had shown mercy. Lin Yuan stood silent, his expression unreadable as the arrogant man continued, until the guild leader stepped in, cutting him off and instructing him to treat the new recruits with respect. The man hastily sheathed his sword, pretending he was only joking, and the leader turned to warn the duo directly, telling them not to get cocky and to prove themselves worthy. Soon after, a man with an eye patch stepped forward, announcing roll call before their descent into the Bloodscale Cavern. The gathered group, all of them newcomers to the main city, shifted nervously yet with determination in their eyes. The guild leader raised his voice, declaring proudly that even the Grim Reaper himself would have to give way before the might of the Black Tree Guild. His bold words stirred the morale of the group, who cheered in unison as they followed him into the ominous cave. Now dressed in more practical armor, Han Chang tapped a guild member playfully with his red flag, his enthusiasm unshaken, calling out for Lin Yuan to hurry and rambling about rumors of shining slimes deep inside. Lin Yuan paid no attention to his antics, his smirk faint but noticeable as his gaze lingered on the dark cavern entrance, where a scent from within stirred a rare spark of excitement inside him. Their path soon opened into a crossroads where the strange silence weighed heavily, for not a single monster had yet appeared. One of the rookies turned toward the guild leader, asking which way to go. With calm calculation, the leader suggested splitting into groups, though immediate concern rose from the newcomers about the dangers of facing monsters alone. A hooded guild member silenced them, revealing that their leaders had already scouted the cavern, ensuring the routes were safe. Shock rippled through the group as they realized the guild had explored this place in advance. With smug authority, the leader explained that the middle path was laced with lizard pheromones, making it the most dangerous, while the other two paths were clear. He then declared that the Black Tree Guild would take the middle path, generously leaving the two safer routes for the others, before grinning as he turned to the rookies and asked their thoughts on the plan. Impressed by their senior's foresight, the players quickly agreed to follow their lead. But Lin Yuan, without hesitation, raised his hand and pointed toward the left path, stating firmly that he and his companion would take that route. The leader's smile did not falter as he agreed, then casually asked if anyone else would like to join them. The rookies glanced between themselves, whispering doubts about Lin Yuan, claiming he looked suspicious and unreliable, probably hiding his true level, though one girl blushed as she admitted he was handsome. The guild leader chuckled with a false sense of regret, saying he could not force anyone to join them, while inside he sneered, thinking of Lin Yuan and Han Chung as nothing more than a pair of idiots walking into their doom. Deeper into the cave, water dripped steadily from the ceiling, forming ripples across the shallow puddles scattered along the icy floor. The two warriors pressed forward into the frost-bitten darkness, their path illuminated only by the faint glow of tiny slimes clinging to the cavern walls. Han Chung shivered uncontrollably, commenting on the rapid, unnatural drop in temperature, and added with unease that he could feel a pair of unseen eyes watching them from the shadows. Lin Yuan, calm and composed, replied that he had noticed as well, confirming that something more was lurking nearby. Han Chung's face stiffened in shock, his voice trembling as he questioned how this was possible when the guild leader had assured them the road was safe. Lin Yuan's lips curled into a thin smile as he explained that the leader was simply using them as disposable pawns, baiting the new recruits to scout out dangerous paths for him. Han Chung looked at him with wide, worried eyes, asking why he hadn't exposed the man's plan, but Lin Yuan offered no direct answer. He simply plucked one of the glowing slimes from the rocks, the creature writhing in surprise in his hand, and remarked that he wanted to see just how much prey he could draw out from this very spot. His curiosity was soon rewarded, for from the western passage came the sound of claws scraping against stone, followed by the emergence of a horde of elite iron-eating lizards, their crimson eyes burning with predatory hunger. An iron spike shot forward, slamming into the ground just inches before them. At the same time, down the middle path, a guild mage unleashed a roaring fire spell, scorching the lizards, while a swordsman charged headlong, cutting down one of the beasts to prove the fearsome strength of the Black Tree Guild. Reporting back, the swordsman told his leader that the escape groups were distracting the monsters, making their own path far easier. But their leader smirked darkly, revealing his intention to wait until the rookies were nearly slaughtered, letting the lizards tear them apart, before he would descend like a vulture and strike down both monsters and survivors alike with a hidden spiked weapon. Yet his arrogance was soon tested as 3 lizards suddenly dropped from the ceiling, surrounding him. He smirked at their audacity, taunting them to come all at once, and with a single powerful swing, his strikes landed like thunder, sending the beasts staggering back. He scoffed, declaring that trash like them would always remain at the bottom of the food chain. Back at the other path, Han Chung stood frozen in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief as one of the lizards lashed out with its iron tail whip, the strike thundering forward, only to be intercepted by Lin Yuan's undead vulture, which countered with a deadly spinning sickle throw. Another vulture vanished into stealth, executing a precise backstab that tore through the monster's scales, and before long, an entire army of zombies erupted from the darkness, overwhelming the horde. Han Chung was left speechless, watching with awe as he realized just how much stronger Lin Yuan had become. So cool, so powerful, he muttered under his breath, unable to hide his admiration, and Lin Yuan only smirked, reminding him that he had said he had some preparations to make. A system notification flickered before him. 55. Elite iron-eating lizards defeated. Lin Yuan nodded with satisfaction, remarking on how efficient the battle had been, while Han Chung looked on in envy, wishing he could one day reach the same level of power. But before their relief could settle, the entire cavern began to quake violently, stones crumbling from the ceiling as tremors shook the ground. Han Chung shouted out to Lin Yuan, but seeing him still occupied, he steeled himself and decided that this time he must face the danger on his own, without relying entirely on others. He followed the rumbling deeper into the cave, each step heavy with tension, until suddenly it stopped. The silence was chilling. He lifted his head, confused as to why the tremors had ended, and in that instant, a massive red tentacle lashed out from the darkness, striking at him with monstrous force, only to be barely deflected by his blade. The blonde warrior froze in place, his breath catching in his throat as the ground beneath him ruptured and a massive red tentacle burst upward, towering before him like a nightmarish spear. Beads of sweat rolled down his pale face as his lips trembled, unable to form words in the face of such horror. In an instant, the monstrous appendage lashed forward, coiling around his shield and wrenching him violently across the rocky cavern floor, his body skidding helplessly before being flung down with brutal force. His weapons slipped from his grip as he cried out desperately for help, only to feel the crushing embrace of the tentacle as it wrapped around his torso, constricting tighter and tighter, cutting off his air. The tip of the appendage split into two jagged points, poised to pierce his body, and with his eyes wide in despair, he believed his end had finally come. But just as the killing blow descended, a brilliant cyan light carved through the darkness, swift, precise, unstoppable. Lin Yuan appeared in that flash, his blade slicing clean through the tentacle with a single strike. With cold disdain, he scoffed at the beast for daring to reveal itself. The severed limb dissolved into a cascade of red particles, its power nullified, while the captive warrior plummeted toward the ground. Lin Yuan seized him mid-fall, gripping his ponytail and tossing him with effortless strength away from danger, sending him sprawling toward safety. Coughing and shaken, the young warrior scrambled up and warned frantically that a huge monster was about to emerge, insisting they flee before it was too late. His words proved true as the earth convulsed violently, the cavern floor split apart, stone shattering as massive jagged spikes thrust upward from below. Han Cheng's eyes widened in horror, his voice trembling as he realized escape was impossible. From the abyss erupted a colossal blue-scaled beast, its roar shaking the cavern walls as it revealed its terrifying form, the dungeon's boss. Shock spread across Han Cheng's face as he stammered that the mission had only warned of an elite iguana, not a boss-class monster. Guilt tightened his chest as he turned to his friend, apologizing bitterly and offering to hold the beast off while Lin Yuan escaped. But Lin Yuan only smirked, his calm voice cutting through the chaos as he mocked the very idea of fear. Was this what they called a terrifying monster? He declared firmly that the creature was nothing more than his prey, leaving Han Cheng dumbfounded by his confidence. The massive iguana snarled, glowing eyes locked on its enemies, saliva dripping between its razor fangs as it flexed its massive claws. Lin Yuan launched forward, sword blazing in his grasp, his determination radiating like fire as his friend shouted his name in alarm. With a swift command, he summoned his undead vulture legion, ordering their leader, the Eagle Chief, to unleash its deadly scythe throw attack. The spectral flock obeyed instantly, filling the air with spinning, ethereal blades that rained down upon the towering lizard. But the boss roared defiantly, whipping its colossal iron tail in a sweeping arc. The scales rang like metal as the powerful tail deflected the barrage, shattering the spectral weapons on impact. Yet Lin Yuan's eyes glinted with satisfaction. This was the opening he had been waiting for. He struck without hesitation, channeling his azure spirit seal and releasing a volley of glowing skulls that streaked across the cavern. The spectral barrage slammed into the beast's flank, exploding with violent force and cloaking the battlefield in fire and smoke. Landing with grace, his glowing sword still at the ready, Lin Yuan studied the aftermath, his expression hardening. As the smoke cleared, the boss's massive silhouette loomed, barely harmed, its thick scaled hide showing nothing more than faint burns. The realization struck like ice, even his most powerful skill had barely scratched it. The monster's chest expanded as it reared back, unfazed, and unleashed another deafening roar. Then a chilling system window appeared before Lin Yuan's eyes, confirming his fears. The boss had activated its ultimate skill, toxic sand breath. The cavern quaked as the iguana exhaled, spewing forth a torrent of high-pressure poisonous energy, a flood of green venomous mist tearing through the cavern. From the sidelines, Han Chung screamed in terror, his voice breaking as he cried out for Lin Yuan to dodge before the deadly wave consumed him. The poisonous breath erupted with a thunderous hiss, slamming into the cavern floor and detonating with explosive force, filling the entire chamber with a dense cloud of noxious gas. The air became heavy, the ground beneath the toxic torrent sizzling and corroding into bubbling pits of green sludge that ate through stone as though it were mere paper. For a moment, it looked as if no one could have survived such devastation, but as the cloud dispersed, Lin Yuan emerged through the haze, standing firm and unscathed. His calm yet focused expression revealed nothing but determination, though deep inside, he admitted that this battle was proving far more formidable than any he had expected. The shadow of the monstrous iguana loomed over him, its jagged maw dripping venom as it prepared another earth-shaking strike, but Lin Yuan stood his ground without fear. At the last possible instant, he leapt upward, soaring past the deadly sweep, his smirk betraying a thrill. What others saw as terror, he saw as a true test of strength. To him, this wasn't just survival, it was excitement, a fight that could only fuel his resolve. With a commanding gesture, he called forth new reinforcements, summoning the Master of Eagles in a dazzling burst of green light. The cavern shook as the towering, bird-like warrior materialized, its twin blades gleaming under the cavern's glow, its sharp eyes fixed on the colossal beast before it. With a piercing cry, the warrior dived toward the iguana, its blades striking the monster's tough scales with sparks so bright they lit up the cavern walls. Han Chung, who had been trembling with dread moments earlier, stood frozen in awe. His eyes glimmered as he whispered in wonder at the majestic summon, marveling whether this incredible warrior was yet another of Lin Yuan's mysterious undead minions. The eagle warrior soared gracefully around the monstrous lizard, circling like a predator biding its time, its patience rewarded as it activated its backstab skill, preparing to strike with devastating precision. But the iguana was no ordinary beast. With a guttural roar, its scales glowed fiercely as it activated impenetrable fortress, its body hardening like an unbreakable wall. In the same motion, it whipped its massive spiked tail around with terrifying speed, intercepting the eagle mid-flight before it could strike. The impact was brutal. The summoned warrior was hurled like a rag doll, slamming violently into the cavern wall with a thunderous crack that shook the ground. Han Chung recoiled, stunned, his mind racing as he muttered in disbelief, "Does this monster have eyes on its back?" But Lin Yuan did not waver. His sharp, calculating gaze followed every movement of the beast, and as he analyzed, the truth dawned upon him. This creature did not have all-seeing eyes. Rather, its simple reptilian vision relied on shifts of light and movement. Its perception was heightened through motion, smell, sound, and perhaps even heat, making it a perfect hunter, yet also revealing a hidden flaw. It could not easily detect the still or the subtle. Lin Yuan's smirk returned, sharper than ever. He had found the key to victory. Raising his hand, scales of ethereal energy glowing along his arm, he conjured two massive fireballs, their flames spiraling wildly as they illuminated the cavern in an orange blaze. With an unflinching taunt, he dared the beast to test its defenses against his fire, challenging its pride and strength. Roaring in rage, the iguana lunged forward, its spiked tail lashing with crushing force as it shattered both fireballs in bursts of embers. The cavern echoed with its ear-splitting cry, saliva spraying from its massive fangs, its glowing eyes locked entirely on Lin Yuan as it thrashed in fury. From afar, Han Chang's heart raced, his voice trembling as he shouted warnings to his companion, begging him to retreat, terrified that this reckless tactic would only lead to his death. He cried out that the fireballs were far too weak, that the beast was barely scratched, but Lin Yuan's smirk only widened, his calm gaze fixed unwaveringly on the enraged monster. Everything was unfolding exactly as he had planned. Then, as Han Chung's eyes darted in confusion, he noticed his companion's cloak billowing as Lin Yuan began moving deliberately toward the mound of fallen undead lizards, his silhouette cast long against the eerie glow of the cavern. Han Chung froze, bewildered and anxious, wondering desperately what scheme his friend was about to unveil. The atmosphere grew heavier with every step Lin Yuan took, his glowing sword drawn, the beast raging behind him, and the tension in the air became unbearable. As though something monumental was about to erupt from the trap he was preparing to spring, the young hero soared through the air just as the massive iguana charged blindly toward him, its monstrous bulk shaking the cavern with every step. With a cunning gleam in his eyes, Lin Yuan abruptly shifted his momentum, halting midair before spinning gracefully toward the pile of corpses below. The beast thundered straight into the trap without hesitation, crashing headfirst into the mound of undead bodies. Its claws tore through decayed flesh and shattered bones, but before it could comprehend its mistake, Lin Yuan's glowing blade flared to life, reflecting in the reptile's furious eyes. Smirking, he taunted the lumbering brute for being too dim-witted to stop itself, calling it a big dummy as if mocking its pride. Enraged, the colossal lizard bellowed with fury, but it was already too late. With a triumphant grin, Lin Yuan activated his corpse explosion art, unleashing a devastating chain reaction. A blinding emerald detonation ripped through the cavern, blasting the monster point blank. The earth shook violently, rocks shattered, and the air trembled as the beast's armored scales cracked under the force. The iguana screeched in agony, stumbling to the ground, its massive body smoking and writhing as the blast finally pierced its defenses. Seizing the opening, Lin Yuan darted in without hesitation, his movements sharp and precise. From the left flank, he landed gracefully and pivoted, sprinting around to the beast's right side, setting up a deadly pincer maneuver with his undead eagle chief. The iguana lashed out, its massive claw smashing into the ground with crushing force, but Lin Yuan had already slipped past the strike, reading its movements with uncanny precision. He grinned sharply as realization struck. The beast's primitive eyes could not focus on threats from two sides at once. Exploiting the weakness, his undead minion raised its massive glowing blade and brought it down in a ferocious strike, green energy surging as the weapon cleaved into the monster's skull. The iguana roared in pain, its head snapping back from the force of the blow, just as Lin Yuan charged his sword with crackling lightning. Electric arcs surged around his body, his killing intent radiating like a storm as he vowed aloud that this final attack would end the beast's life. His reflection glimmered in the creature's wide, fear-filled eyes as he lunged. With a thunderous cry, Lin Yuan drove his electrified strike straight into the iguana's gaping maw. Lightning tore through its throat, detonating inside its body with catastrophic force. The cavern shook as the colossal monster convulsed, screeching in pure torment before collapsing with a final deafening roar. A system notification flared into existence. Weak point struck. Boss defeated, as multiple level-up windows cascaded before him, congratulating Lin Yuan for reaching level 14. He exhaled calmly, casting a quick healing spell, and smiled faintly as another notification confirmed his undead minions had recovered 85% of their strength. A status window then appeared, detailing the upgrade of his level 3 Dark Curse skill, an ominous ability that could wound enemies or empower his undead allies. He mused quietly that using another scroll would raise it to level 4 instantly, but his focus soon returned to the battlefield. Glancing at the smoking remains of the colossal beast, Lin Yuan's expression hardened. The sacrifice of his fallen undead had not been in vain. A chilling glow rippled across the cavern as a new system window emerged, confirming that he had successfully revived the iguana as a terrifying iron-eating undead. Its massive frame shuddered as it rose under his control, eyes now glowing with eerie crimson light. With a determined smirk, Lin Yuan declared that this beast would serve as his shield from this day forward. His companion erupted into cheers, giddy over the piles of loot scattered around the chamber, but Lin Yuan raised his hand, silencing him. Calmly, he explained that they had no reason to celebrate yet. There were still rats lurking in the other tunnels, and unfinished business awaited them. Meanwhile, in another part of the cavern, a far darker scene unfolded. Bodies of rookie adventurers lay strewn across the ground, their faces frozen in despair. The arrogant guild leader of the Black Tree Guild sneered down at the corpses, dismissing them as worthless trash unworthy of even a second glance. His subordinates showered him with praise, proclaiming his wisdom and strength, boasting that he could even topple a lord-class monster with ease. The leader smirked at their words, crushing the skull of a fallen lizard under his boot as he gave the order to advance. This was the perfect time to seize their rewards, he said. The battle was over, and now they would harvest its spoils. But just as the Black Tree Guild marched forward, the ground trembled violently. In an instant, a massive wall of glittering ice erupted before them, surging upward with unstoppable force. Shards of frost tore through the cavern, throwing men off their feet as their triumphant march was halted mid-step. Temperature plummeted, their breath steaming in the sudden chill. The guild leader staggered, his face twisting in rage as he screamed into the frozen air, demanding to know who dared to ambush the mighty Black Tree Guild. His furious roar echoed in the cavern, but his answer was waiting just beyond the icy wall. The young man slowly lifted his gaze toward the ledge above, where the hero and his companion stood looking down on them with cold contempt. Mocking them, he asked if they weren't going to collect the bodies, even offering to do it on their behalf. The The guild members froze, stunned that the two had survived the deadly iron iguana they had been sent to fight. Shock gave way to fury as the blonde warrior stepped forward, accusing them with a snarl. He spat out that he thought their guild was supposed to be big and upright, yet all he saw were deceivers hiding behind cowardly tricks. The young man merely scoffed at the remark, declaring that it was an honor for them to be used as stepping stones for the guild's glory. The guild leader's face twisted in irritation, gritting his teeth at the sight of these survivors who should have been long dead. His annoyance sharpened further when the hero's companion called them shameless for their deceit inside the cave. The leader's eyes narrowed into a glare. He had already decided this brat was getting far too annoying and needed to be disposed of. At that moment, one of his men stepped forward, gripping a massive spiked mace. "Your luck ends here," he growled as he swung with bone-crushing force. The hero stepped between them, telling his friend to stand back. With a single strike of his blade, he intercepted the mace, the sheer impact shattering the icy ground beneath their feet. Without hesitation, he leapt into the air, his sword glowing with a fierce light, taunting the guild leader and asking if this was all he had. The captain tightened his grip on the chain, swinging again with brutal strength, but the hero moved effortlessly, gliding across the slippery terrain. His focused eyes locked in as he prepared a counterstrike. The guild leader smirked in disdain. "You think you can face a seasoned warrior with a toy?" he mocked. But the hero only smiled in return. Channeling his inner energy, he unleashed a devastating spiritual skill. Two glowing skulls tore through the air, crashing into his foe with a thunderous explosion of green light. The cavern shook as a shockwave rippled outward, but when the smoke cleared, the guild leader still stood tall, weapon raised, unshaken. His eyes darted about, demanding to know where his enemy had gone. Suddenly, the hero appeared above him, descending with a fierce slash. Their weapons clashed, sparks scattering as steel met steel. The guild leader sneered, having expected this, and scoffed that his opponent's survival was nothing more than luck. The hero's grip tightened, his expression calm yet cutting, as he warned him in a chilling voice, "When dealing with worthless trash, one should always sleep with an eye open, for life could be ended at any moment." But then, everything shifted. A sudden jolt of energy crackled through the cavern, and the hero's eyes widened in shock. The guild leader roared, channeling his weapon, and unleashed a fearsome electric skill. Blue lightning ripped through the cavern, the mace crackling with destructive force as it struck down. Henkang's scream echoed, calling out the name of the unleashed skill, his voice trembling from the sheer power it carried. While the chamber rumbled, two more guild members advanced, smirking as they told the hero that it was his turn to fall. The guild leader raised his gaze, expecting to see his enemy broken and charred. Instead, his blood ran cold. There, sitting calmly upon a throne of ice, the hero rested with an expression of complete composure, utterly unfazed by the attack. Rage ignited in the captain's chest as he lunged forward, roaring for his opponent to lie down and die. But in that instant, his expression contorted in horror. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The young man had effortlessly caught the chain of his mace in one hand, halting its deadly momentum as though it were nothing. His calm voice cut through the silence, asking simply, "Are you the guild captain?" The words left the leader trembling, his face drenched in cold sweat as he struggled to comprehend the monstrous power before him. A sinister smirk curved across the hero's lips. The hero seized the guild captain's wrist with terrifying strength, yanking him closer until the man's face twisted in agony. His arm felt like it was being crushed in a vice, completely trapped. A dark look shadowed the young man's face, his lips curling into a sinister smile as raw power radiated from him. With one swift motion, he hurled the bald man across the cavern, the force so intense that the shockwave sent the other two guild members flying to the ground. Gritting his teeth, the leader admitted he had underestimated this mysterious boy, but he quickly barked at his companions to stop standing around and attack. The two shouted in agreement, charging forward with him in a coordinated assault, but the hero didn't even flinch. With icy calm, he sneered that trash is still trash. In an instant, a massive wall of ice erupted from the ground, striking the three mid-charge and throwing them into the air. Before they could recover, the boy summoned two monstrous winged creatures that burst into existence, their claws and fangs gleaming under the dim light. The guild members froze in horror, demanding to know what those things were, but it was too late. The beasts lunged forward, ready to slaughter. Panic gripped the guild leader as he broke into a cold sweat, completely unsure what to do. Then the hero raised his hand again, summoning several glowing spectral skulls that appeared behind the bald man and launched forward, blasting him with dark energy. The winged minions pinned the remaining two enemies to the ground, their screams echoing through the chamber. The captain lay crushed beneath the boy's boot, trembling and desperate, begging him to stop and threatening that his guild would never forgive this. But the protagonist's expression didn't change. He stared down at him with total indifference. Just then, his blonde friend rushed in, wrapping him in a hug of relief, saying he had been worried sick. Annoyed, the hero shoved him aside, telling him to stay quiet. With his sword raised, he declared that the enemy guild was cruel and would punish this man for failing. Realizing he was finished, the bulb leader begged for mercy, asking what it would take to be spared. The boy smiled coldly and demanded a list of the guild's high-level players, searching for a rare and powerful profession he remembered from his past life. Confused, the man asked why he needed that information, but his question was answered with a scream as the boy drove his sword through his hand. Trembling, the leader agreed to write whatever was asked. Once he handed over the list, the boy scanned it quickly but found nothing matching what he sought. The defeated man, still pinned down, nervously asked if they were free to go now. The young man smiled again and said yes, he would free them from this situation. Relieved, the leader began to thank him, but his relief turned to horror as the boy added that they had hurt innocent people and needed to pay for that. A flash of green light burst from his hand, draining the life out of all 3 guild members in seconds. Their bodies dissolved, leaving behind piles of loot. System notifications filled the air, showing item drops, a silver hammer sword and a bronze cloak. The hero picked up the new sword, inspecting it silently with a faintly puzzled look. His blonde companion appeared again, grinning as he carried a chest full of treasure, insisting that he wanted to buy the loot and not just take advantage of him. The boy replied flatly that it didn't matter. None of it was useful to him anyway. He transferred the items over without hesitation. Outside the cave, the hero reflected quietly as his partner warned him that the guild might seek revenge even in real life, suggesting he hire a bodyguard. But the boy brushed it off, saying he knew how to deal with insects. Later, back home, he removed his gaming helmet and called out to Yuan for dinner. Rising from his chair, he opened the door, only to freeze. Standing there was a man in a suit, wearing the same kind of gaming helmet, looking at him with a heavy expression. Shock flashed across the boy's face when he realized it was his father. The older man removed his helmet awkwardly, showing it to his son and asking if his was broken. The boy said it worked fine and asked why he even had one. Embarrassed, his father admitted that he hadn't bought it. His mother found it in the room of a girl named Tan. The hero's expression darkened as memories surfaced. In his past life, this was the exact time Tan awakened her class. A woman's voice called them to dinner before the food got cold, and at the table, she mentioned the father only wanted a way to connect with his son. The man laughed it off, and the boy thought quietly that if his parents played too, he could protect them this time. He told them the game wasn't hard and offered to buy 2 more helmets. His mother protested about wasting money, but he asked if his sister Tan was home. She said Tan must be out with friends, so he tried calling her, but the call failed, saying the user was unavailable. That was strange. His sister never ignored messages. His mother told him to eat first, but he stood, saying he'd go out to buy something before the stores closed. After he left, his parents sighed about how distant he and Tan had become. Outside, the boy's face hardened. As he descended the stairs, flashes of his past life played in his mind. His sister returning home once, shaken and covered in dirt. He'd rushed to her, offering food, asking what happened, but she brushed him off coldly, begging him not to tell their parents before slamming her door. Back then, he never understood, but now he remembered the truth. In that other life, she was caught up in a secretive organization founded by 9 people, the System Organization, whose influence stretched across both the game and reality. Among them was a prophet who could sense chosen ones and recruit them. Their power grew fast, their actions unpredictable, their control absolute. Even he had once joined them, taking on dangerous missions in silence. Snapping back to the present, he clenched his fists. If it was them again, this time would be different. He wouldn't let his sister walk that path again. Determined, he left home, his figure disappearing into the dark city streets. After some time, he spotted her, inside a coffee shop, sitting across from 2 men. His heart sank. He ducked behind a wall, then activated his invisibility skill. His body shimmered and vanished. At level 3, it would last 5 minutes. Enough time. He slipped inside, silent as a shadow, listening closely. One of the men spoke softly, telling Tan that he'd explained everything, and it was her choice to believe him or not. He invited her to join them in preparing for a great disaster that would happen in 3 years. As they stood to leave, the hero stayed hidden, watching closely. The second man scolded his partner for scaring the girl with his aura, but the serious one said it was necessary, that what they were dealing with was far more serious than she realized. Then, he suddenly stopped talking and turned his head, his piercing gaze locked directly onto where the invisible boy stood. Their eyes met. A chill shot down the hero's spine. The man raised his hand, a ring glinting on his finger, and murmured the word dispel. A surge of energy pulsed through the room, shattering the magic around him. The hero's eyes widened as a notification appeared before him. Invisibility skill nullified. The organization member's sharp eyes narrowed, immediately sensing the hidden intruder's presence, but instead of reacting, he turned casually toward the counter, pretending nothing was amiss. In a calm tone, he ordered a herbal tea to go, and the barista nodded, saying it would just take a moment. The man replied that he'd grab it himself for the mystery customer, masking his suspicion with a fake smile. Now visible, Mixie realized the ring's ability had a 3-second delay, just enough time to plan. The partner sipped his drink calmly, pretending the situation was normal. Before leaving, the serious man handed Tan a small card, instructing her to call when she made her decision. She stared at the number, lost in thought, clearly torn about their offer. The two men said goodbye and stepped out, promising they'd be waiting for her choice. The moment they disappeared, the hero reactivated his invisibility and silently followed. Slipping past the barista, he exited the cafe into the dark street, but when he looked around, the pair was gone. His heart raced. Did they vanish? He thought. Suddenly, something whizzed past his ear and embedded itself in the ground beside him. He froze, staring at the dark puddle where a ripple revealed his hidden footprint. The two men immediately turned, eyes narrowing as they spotted the faint trace. The system warned that his invisibility was about to fade, and within seconds, it failed completely. He tensed as their gazes locked on him, their faces cold and predatory. But the scene shifted. A crushed plastic cup on the ground showed it had only been a false alarm. The pair hadn't actually noticed him at all and walked away calmly. The one in the coat muttered that maybe he'd been too cautious, but his partner simply replied that, according to the prophet's vision, the girl would join them soon. Then worry about surviving the disaster first, the serious man warned. Hidden in the shadows, the hero watched them disappear into the distance, his expression grim. This organization was dangerous, far beyond what he could risk revealing his true class to. He needed somewhere safe to plan his next move. Meanwhile, Tan sat alone, staring at the card they'd given her. She looked conflicted but resolute, scrolling through her phone before being startled by her brother's voice. Shocked, she asked what he was doing there. He simply smiled and said he went to buy something, and asked if she'd eaten yet. Avoiding his gaze, she muttered that she was fine. He lifted the bag of food, saying he'd brought dinner so their mom wouldn't worry. She thought to herself that her brother barely took care of himself, yet here he was worrying about her. He told her gently to come home with him so they could rest. She hesitated for a moment, lost in thought, but eventually followed. At home, their mother offered them food, but Tan refused, saying she was going to rest. Her mother insisted on cooking, but the girl walked to her room and locked the door. Inside, she sighed deeply, exhaustion and confusion written across her face. Collapsing on her bed, she thought about everything that had happened since she started playing that game. Her mind replayed the terrifying moment she and her party fought the giant mantis boss, a level 5 monster with insane attack power. Her teammate screamed for her to run, vowing to hold it back. But the purple-haired girl refused. Gritting her teeth, she charged in, swinging her sword to block the mantis's deadly strikes. Even with monsters surrounding her, she showed no fear. When the beast struck again, the blow knocked her down, pain surging through her body. Just then, a system alert flashed. Secret profession unlocked. Power exploded from within her. Surrounded by enemies, she rose, let out a fierce cry, and unleashed a massive area attack. Blue energy pulsed from her blade, wiping out waves of insects as shockwaves tore through the forest. Panting atop a rock, she glowed with golden light, activating her new ability, Sword of Dawn. Now, lying awake, she realized she could still feel that strength in her body, as if the game and reality were merging. She wondered if she could really protect anyone from the coming disaster. Looking at her trembling, glowing hand, doubt filled her heart. If even her power wasn't enough, then no one else would stand a chance. Her expression hardened. She couldn't let that happen. Gazing at a framed photo of her family, she swore to grow stronger, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, her brother sat in his room, thinking about how he needed to act fast, not just for himself, but for them. The next morning, he visited a real estate agency. The agent greeted him politely, but her smile faltered when the boy said he wanted a house with top-tier security systems and reinforced defenses. She eyed him skeptically until he pulled out a sleek black credit card. Her jaw dropped. The staff immediately recognized its limit, millions. Suddenly, everyone in the office was all smiles, treating him like royalty. Hours later, he brought his parents to their new home, a massive modern mansion with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a private pool. His mother gasped in disbelief, calling it something out of a TV show, while his father stood frozen, asking if this was really their house. Beaming, the boy said yes, he'd bought it outright. They worried about the mortgage, but he assured them there was none. It was all from his game earnings. Pride and joy filled their eyes as they realized how far their son had come. Walking away, He thought the mansion's security would keep them safe while he focused on watching the organization's moves, but his thoughts shattered when he sensed danger nearby. A group of thugs appeared from the shadows, blocking his path. The bald leader grinned. It was the same man from the guild he'd destroyed in the game. "Took me a while to find you," he sneered, ordering his men to attack. One rushed in, yelling that anyone who crossed them would regret it. The hero only smirked. Too slow, his form flickered and vanished. Before they could react, he reappeared midair and smashed a brutal punch straight into one thug's face, sending him crashing to the ground. Moving like lightning, he weaved through their attacks, taking them down one after another. Soon, the alley was silent. Bodies sprawled around him. The bald leader, coughing blood, looked up in terror. "What are you, a human or a monster?" he whispered. The boy crouched down, his blade pressed to the man's throat, eyes cold and merciless. "Looks like you don't value life much," he said softly. Trembling, the leader begged for his life, blurting out that he knew about a secret mission, something only the organization's core members were aware of. With eyes glowing a deep, menacing red, Lin Yuan glared down at the trembling bald guild leader pinned beneath his boot. His voice was cold, commanding the man to keep talking. The terrified leader, sweating and pale, finally broke, revealing a secret, something about a blacksmith named Tongs in the main city. Hearing that name triggered a flicker of recognition in the protagonist's mind. He remembered a rumor from his past life about an NPC who could forge gold-tier weapons, equipment so rare it was considered mythical. His grip tightened, muscles tensing as his patience thinned. The air itself seemed to grow heavier. Leaning in closer, his voice dropped to a chilling whisper as he warned the man not to even think about playing tricks. If his family ever got dragged into danger, both in the game and outside it, he promised there would be nowhere safe to hide. To drive the point home, he demonstrated his power, crushing the ground beside the man's head with terrifying precision. The guild leader froze, drenched in sweat, nodding frantically that he understood. The scene cut away to the Moonlight Night Tavern in the West Desert City, a lively den filled with laughter, the clinking of mugs, and the rich aroma of hot food. Patrons cheered and toasted with wooden tankards, while a loud blacksmith mocked a fair-skinned stranger, scoffing that someone like him couldn't even lift a pickaxe. With a grin, he promised a free weapon if the man proved him wrong. The cloaked protagonist watched from the shadows, confirming the information was real. If Tongs truly existed, mining was his next move. As he made his way through the bustling tavern, his attention was drawn to a scene unfolding nearby. A drunk man pestering a woman, trying to force her to drink. The woman swayed, her voice weak as she told him to back off. Lin Yuan paused, glancing over his shoulder, his sharp eyes narrowing. The harasser noticed and snapped, barking threats and telling him to mind his own business. But before tension could rise, the woman suddenly turned her gaze to Lin Yuan, her lips curling into a tipsy smile. "You're handsome," she slurred, offering to buy him a drink. He looked at her with cool disinterest and rejected the offer, turning to leave. "Hey, don't walk away," she called, stumbling after him in her heels, until she tripped. In a blur of motion, he caught her mid-fall, his arm around her waist as her body dipped gracefully in his hold. Her cheeks flushed. "You like dancing too?" she mumbled dreamily. He sighed quietly, exasperated, realizing she had completely misread the situation. Moments later, she fell unconscious in his arms. He found a nearby room, gently set her on the bed, and covered her with a blanket before silently leaving. Outside, the night grew darker as the scene shifted to the entrance of a torchlit cave, his next destination. Inside, the rhythmic sound of pickaxes echoed as his summoned dog-headed zombies mined tirelessly. Watching them work, he noted that having 12 of them operating through his netherworld gate would make gathering ore exponentially faster. Suddenly, a sharp blur sliced past his face. An ambush. The ground split open as horned creatures known as violent moles burst from below, screeching as they charged. Without hesitation, he summoned a massive spectral scorpion, its carapace gleaming with dark light. "Kill them all," he ordered. The creature lunged forward, pincers crushing, stinger flashing. Within moments, the monsters lay dead, their bodies twitching on the ground. He raised his hand and began a dark ritual, shadows swirling as he murmured that collecting varied monsters would broaden his tactical arsenal. The corpses dissolved into black mist, reforming as ghostly minions bound to his will. But just as the summoning completed, the ground quaked violently. A massive explosion thundered from deeper inside the cave. He turned, eyes narrowing as he sensed an overwhelming presence. A colossal, bear-like beast with burning red eyes stormed into view, chasing a lone adventurer. A system alert identified it. Violent Mole Lord, an elite boss. Drawing his intricate blade, Lin Yuan muttered that someone must have deliberately lured the boss here. Nearby, the adventurer, a priest, raised a golden staff, channeling divine energy. A searing beam shot out, but instead of hitting the monster, it veered straight toward Lin Yuan. The ground cracked as he stomped, propelling himself sideways with blinding speed, narrowly evading the blast. In the next instant, he grabbed the priest's wrist, his expression unreadable. "Was that a locked skill?" he asked, voice calm but sharp. The priest stammered, shocked, as a system message revealed he had actually cast holy armor, a defensive buff, on Lin Yuan. Before they could speak further, another player arrived, shouting excitedly as he recognized the priest from the Super God Iron Triangle Guild. The newcomer, a warrior, released a small mechanical fly that began live streaming the encounter. Within seconds, 15 viewers joined, the chat exploding with surprise at seeing a battle priest taking on a dungeon boss. The protagonist smiled faintly, amused, noting the priest's loyalty despite his blunder. "Fine," he said, "I'll take the fight." As the stream viewership spiked past 100, the audience began recognizing him, the master who devoured the world boss. The Mole Lord roared furiously, slamming its claws down toward the priest, but before it could hit, Lin Yuan stepped in, catching the blow with his bare hands. The priest froze in shock, whispering Lin Yuan's name in disbelief. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the bald ex-guild leader watched the stream on a holographic screen, admitting quietly that losing to this monster of a man wasn't shameful. Behind him, his guildmates argued online buzz, claiming their president was still the best. The guild leader, Kwang, glared at them, his jaw tight with suppressed rage. One subordinate nervously showed him the comment feed. Viewers were mocking him, saying even his time was over. With a snarl, Kwang pressed a blade to the man's neck, demanding who dared say that. But his lieutenant, Nuan, smirked and said he was just quoting what the world already knew. The era of the young mad god had begun. Kwang's eyes burned. "Is the stream still live?" he asked. Nuan nodded. Kwang clenched his fist and shouted for everyone to log in. They were heading to the mine. Back underground, the boss howled in fury, and Lin Yuan met it head-on. He unleashed a flurry of glowing slashes, his movements too fast to follow. Turning to the priest, he said calmly, "You can go now. The boss only wants me." The Mole Lord roared again, smashing the ground, sending shockwaves rippling through the cave. Leaping lightly over the debris, the protagonist launched a powerful burst of chi energy, blasting straight into the creature's chest. The explosion shook the cavern as viewers spammed the chat with disbelief at his control. The monster charged again, blinded by rage, but he was ready. "Too predictable," he muttered, summoning a pack of spectral wolves that swarmed the beast, tearing and clawing as he closed in. "Anger blinds you," he told the creature coldly, "but you won't need to understand that, because this ends now." He thrust his blade deep into its arm, twisting as the monster screamed in agony. One of his undead warriors, a dog-headed zombie, leapt high and brought its massive sword down, cleaving through the Mole Lord's skull with a sickening crunch. Adjusting his gauntlets, Lin Yuan smirked, gathering his final burst of energy. Time to finish this. His body flared with power as he released a devastating blast that engulfed the monster entirely. The cave trembled, then went silent. System notification, boss defeated. Level up. Equipment acquired. He examined the drops, a silver-grade pursuit dagger boosting speed and attack, and silver agility boots enhancing movement. The priest stared in awe, calling him the legendary master who devoured the death wolf and eagerly asked to add him as a friend. Lin Yuan didn't even look back. "You've got the wrong person." But before he could leave, a sudden explosion erupted, a fireball flew past, and a massive wall of ice sealed the cave's entrance shut, trapping them inside. From the darkness of the shattered tunnel, a figure emerged, his eyes burning crimson, his body wreathed in flames. With a single, effortless swing of his blade, he cleaved through the thick ice wall, scattering shards that hissed in the firelight. The smoke cleared to reveal him standing tall and unshaken. A smirk tugged at his lips as dozens of players appeared from the shadows. Kwang Shen and the entire Fury Guild had arrived. Their leader stepped forward, his arrogance radiating through the cavern, and mockingly suggested turning the protagonist into ashes to see if the priest still recognized him. Raising his blade, Kwang Shen roared for his men to prepare for battle, declaring that they would show the world what happened to anyone who dared cross the Fury Guild. Lin Yuan's gaze sharpened. He knew exactly what this was, a public display, an attempt to use him for their own glory. But instead of fear, amusement flashed in his crimson eyes. "Fine," he muttered. "Let's make this interesting." Just then, the young priest appeared beside him, gripping his glowing staff. "I'll fight with you," he declared, his voice trembling with conviction. The protagonist didn't even look his way. "Then fight by staying alive," he replied flatly. The guild leader chuckled darkly, pointing at him. Still pretending to be calm, huh? You really think? His words were cut short by a thunderous crack. In a blur, the protagonist appeared before him and backhanded him across the face. The slap echoed through the cavern, and the guild leader stumbled back, eyes wide in disbelief. Were you saying something? Lin Yuan asked calmly. The chat on the live stream erupted, viewers spamming messages about how the fight had started with a single slap. Enraged and humiliated, Kuang Shen screamed, veins bulging in his neck. Kill him! Kill that arrogant bastard! The Fury Guild moved as one, warriors rushed forward while mages and archers took position behind them, readying spells and arrows. The priest shouted in panic, insisting that no one could take on an entire guild alone, but the protagonist had already analyzed their formation. The backline goes first, he whispered, activating his invisibility skill. His body flickered and vanished. Shouts erupted immediately. Where is he? Use Dispel, now. Two mages began to chant, but before the words left their lips, a cold voice whispered behind them, too late. His blade flashed once. Both mages dropped before they could even scream. The guild members panicked as alarms filled the voice chat, yelling that he was already inside their ranks. Kuang Shen barked orders, claiming that Lin Yuan was weakened from his last fight and that sheer numbers would overwhelm him. But the viewers watching the live stream laughed, flooding the chat with mocking comments about the guild's cowardice for ganging up on one man. The Fury Guild charged. Blades clashed, fireballs exploded, and arrows rained down in a chaotic storm. Lin Yuan weaved through every attack, his movements a blur of precision. One strike, one fall. He knocked down opponents effortlessly, turning their numbers against them in the narrow cave. Too crowded for teamwork, he thought, cutting through another group with a swift, brutal spin. Fireballs detonated around him, engulfing the tunnel in flames. The guild members cheered, believing they'd finally destroyed him. The explosion rocked the cavern, smoke and ash filling the air. But through the haze, a shadow sprinted silently along the walls. Him. As they celebrated too soon, he led them deeper into the cave, retreating deliberately. Kuang Shen grinned when he saw the path end, a dead end. Got him! He shouted, charging forward. But then his smile froze. Something felt wrong. He looked up, just in time to see the protagonist hanging upside down from the ceiling, waiting. What? He gasped, but it was too late. Lin Yuan dropped down like a meteor, his boot slamming straight into Kuang Shen's head. The impact echoed like thunder. The guild leader crumpled to the floor with a scream as the others recoiled in shock. Lin Yuan landed smoothly, kicking another player aside like he was nothing. A sneak attack. Kuang Shen coughed, glaring up at him, blood dripping from his nose. Despicable. Lin Yuan grabbed him by the head, his grip like iron, pressing a glowing blue dagger against his throat. His eyes gleamed with that cold, familiar crimson light. Tell me, he said softly, is your guild coming back, or will your master blame you for their deaths? The trapped leader could barely breathe. Behind him, his guild members turned to flee, only to find the tunnel blocked by a swarm of spectral beasts. The creatures hissed and growled, forming an unbreakable wall of shadows. No, the leader whispered, horror dawning in his eyes. What did you do? The protagonist's expression didn't change. Ask them yourself. With a flick of his hand, he activated Corpse Explosion. The air detonated with a pulse of black energy. One by one, the trapped guild members were consumed by the blast, their screams echoing, cut short as the cavern filled with searing blue flames. The live stream went insane. Comments flooded in, viewers calling it the most insane one-man raid they'd ever seen. The spectral scorpion reappeared from the void, delivering the final strike that split the last survivor in half before vanishing again into smoke. Silence followed. When it was over, he stood amid the glowing remains of his enemies. A few system notifications blinked to life. Gold-grade bloodthirsty double blades, acquired. Without a word, he sheathed his weapon and turned away, deciding to leave before the crowd arrived. Back in town, he walked into the blacksmith's forge and unloaded his haul of ore. The blacksmith whistled in admiration, his hammer pausing mid-air. That's some fine work, lad. Bring me more like this, and I'll make it worth your while. His favorability increased, and Lin Yuan nodded. It was a long-term mission, but one that would pay off steadily. Outside, he thought over his next move. The Fury Guild's gear would sell well, but chasing the first believer was too passive. Instead, he'd follow the clues he already had. He remembered that the believer's followers could control snakes, and that connected directly to the ancient Snake Man civilization, rumored to hide beneath the city's sewers. Following his hunch, he descended into the underground tunnels. His boots splashed through murky water as the stench of decay filled the air. He remembered a basic quest once given by Sheriff 2, Kill the Rats, a cover for a secret dungeon hidden below. If he could reach it first, the loot would be his alone. After navigating the maze-like tunnels, his crimson eyes caught movement high up on a wall, a faint carving. He raised his palm and unleashed a burst of blue energy, shattering the stone. Behind it, a narrow path revealed itself, but before he could move forward, a deafening hiss filled the chamber. From the shadows, a massive king haze serpent slithered out, its scales shimmering blue, its eyes glowing like twin suns. A system window appeared, level 60, unknown stats. His mind raced. A monster this strong in a beginner zone? He activated invisibility, but the serpent's gaze followed him easily. The skill was useless. Realizing brute stealth wouldn't work, he dashed up a crumbling pillar, luring the beast toward the narrow passage. "Fine," he muttered, his red eyes narrowing. "We'll do this the hard way." He dove headfirst into the serpent's path, baiting it. The massive head struck down, shaking the entire sewer. He rolled aside, summoning his spectral scorpion mid-air. The two beasts collided, thunder and venom erupting in blinding flashes. As they clashed, he began blasting chunks of the ceiling above. One final hit broke through, a triangle of sunlight pierced the gloom. He launched himself upward, escaping through the opening just as the serpent lunged. Landing on the surface, he squinted against the bright desert sun. Beneath him, the massive serpent's eye gleamed through the hole, but it dared not emerge. "You won't come out here," he muttered. "This is the Western Desert Palace, home of the National Guardian. Here, no monster could approach without being annihilated instantly." The snake hissed in frustration and withdrew into the depths. Watching it vanish, he remembered the ancient feud between the Snake Men and the Desert Kingdom, one that drove their civilization underground to plot revenge. To continue safely, he decided to buy a snake attractant potion that only lured lesser basilisks. Later, at the marketplace, he purchased the potion from a cheerful merchant who thanked him warmly for his business. As he turned to leave, a familiar voice called out behind him. The priest from the mine jogged up, smiling brightly. Lin Yuan paused, recognizing him immediately. "Hey," the priest said, catching his breath. "We should add each other as friends." "Come on." The protagonist hesitated, considering it silently. "I've got things to do," he replied. But the priest followed anyway, insisting they head to Ashavale together. "You should join us, the Super God 3, or maybe," he grinned, "we make it the Super God 4. Lin Yuan's eyes flickered when he heard a single name, Lang Yu. Memories from his past life surfaced. Lang Yu, the president of the second-ranked guild, a powerhouse, and one of the 9 chosen founders of the Order organization. That single clue changed everything. His expression softened slightly as he accepted the friend request. "Fine," he said at last, turning away. "But I've got business to handle first."